Good morning everyone and welcome to this meeting of the Local Review Body of the 31st of October 2024. I can confirm that the meeting has been properly called and is quorate. Can I first ask members to appoint a chair for the meeting, please? Councillor Howie.
Could I nominate Councillor Crothers, please?
Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Crothers, you join me? Oh, sorry, Councillor Thompson, did you want to come in?
No, it's fine. It was just a second, Councillor Howie.
Okay, thank you.
Oh no, just 2 minutes, I'll just get my stuff brought over here. Member, just in case it looks like we might have a wee technical problem, certainly the Council of Justice has been in touch directly with myself saying that he can't, for some reason the system won't let him join. He's in now. Yeah. All right, sorry I didn't see that. Brilliant, Andrew, you've got that sorted out. So, thanks. Good morning again, members, and a very, very warm welcome to the Local Review Body. It's Thursday the 31st of October, just gone 10:30. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council's website for public listening. Remote participants, you all know what the script is in regards to how this works because you've done it that many times before, so I won't rehearse that. Item number for ourselves, it's said in apologies and Chair's approval of members of remote participation, which I'll do now. But Tracy, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. We've got 6 members present in total, 3 present in Council HQ, being the Chair, Councillor Maureen Johnson and Councillor Walters. We've got 3 members present on Microsoft Teams, being Councillor Justy, Councillor Howie and Councillor Thompson, and we've got 1 apology from Councillor Lowe. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks so much for that, Tracy. Item number 3 is any declarations of interest. I'll just give members a chance. I'm looking in the room, don't see any hands coming up in regards to that. Councillor Andrew Justy. Andrew?
Yeah, it's more a statement of connection rather than a declaration of interest. In item 5, I've been contacted on a procedural basis based on the length of time that the agent was waiting on responses. I've raised that with Steve Rogers, but I don't think that's a connection or a interest that requires me to leave the meeting.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Councillor Justy. We'll record that. Tracy's captured that, I think. I'll just give a chance for anybody else. Don't see anybody else coming in. I don't think I can't remember. I might actually have been contacted that myself, I just don't remember. So if for something, I'll look back at my notes actually just in case, because if I was contacted, because I do get contacted from across the region regularly in regards to procedural, and that is around about timelines in particular, and the time it takes. So, okay, we're beyond item number 3 now. Item number 4 is our first substantive item of business. Tracy, have you got anything? I think you've covered, haven't you? So I'm looking at the notes here. Have you got anything you want to go through the procedure? Okay, Tracy. Right.
Thanks, Chair. So we've got 4 notice of reviews for consideration at the meeting today. Your first for consideration is item 4, South Losset Farm, Stranraer, which is refusal of planning permission in principle for erection of dwelling house, reference 231477 PIP. So within your papers there, you've got your notice of review, which are on pages 17 to 30. You've got your report on handling, pages 33 to 99. You've also got included your observations from the appointed officer on the notice of review, which are pages 103 to 105. Planning application form and the associated plans and support information, pages 109 to 117. You then got your decision letter from the council, which was dated the 30th of July this year, and that's pages 121 to 124 in your pack. You've got a list of the relevant extracts from the Local Development Plan 2 and the National Planning Framework 4, pages 127 to 155, and you've got the photos of the application site, pages 159 to 163. So the grounds for refusal, which are on page 122 in your paper, state that 1. The proposed development is contrary to Dumfries and Galloway Council Local Development Plan 2 Policy H3 and the related supplementary guidance and National Planning Framework 4 Policies 9 and 17, which only permit the erection of new houses in the countryside in particular circumstances, and none of these circumstances apply in this case. Specifically, the proposal is not considered to represent beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site, as 1. The existing site is not demonstrably intrusive visually or environmentally, and the condition of the site does not significantly detract from the amenity of the surrounding area, and 2. It has not been satisfactorily demonstrated through this application for planning permission in principle that the proposed development would be suitably scaled, sited and designed to be in keeping with the character of the area. The applicant has requested that the method of determination be by means of a review of the relevant information that's been provided without any further procedure, and you'll find that on page 20 of your papers. The grounds stated in the notice of review in summary are 1. Section 1.1 of the report on handling is totally untrue and misleading. Clearly the planning officer has not undertaken a site visit. 2. Design and materials will be submitted when a full planning application is duly submitted. This application is seeking to establish the principle for the erection of a dwelling on the site of the redundant farm building, which following the adoption of the Scottish Government's National Planning Framework 4 in February 2023 should properly be regarded as presenting an appropriate and legitimate brownfield development site in a rural area. 3. Consideration of this case by the case officer was being based around the use of the premises as a farm or in association with an established agricultural holding. In the interest of clarity, this property is used for domestic residential purposes. 4. The development plan for Dumfries and Galloway is compromised on the new National Planning Framework 4 document adopted in February 2023 and the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 adopted in October 2019. These statutory documents, together with various supplementary guidance notes produced by the Council, take primacy in the determination of planning applications. In the event that there is any incompatibility between the separate documents making up the Development Plan Section 24(3) of the Act as amended, provided that whichever of those is the later in date, then provisions within that shall prevail. The proposal entails the redevelopment of a parcel of land which presently there is a derelict building that was formerly used for agricultural purposes, which the development plan is seeking to encourage and promote prior to the use of any greenfield sites. As the acknowledged preferred approach and promoted at both the national and local levels as the preferred and more suitable solution, when available, the proposal will result in the demolition of the existing buildings on the site, the structure and the form of which does not lend itself to any conversion on the grounds that the comparatively young age of the building does not comply with the Council's requirement that comparative buildings will be built before 1919 to be regarded as a traditional building, which the policy specifically requires. The building works necessary to adapt the existing structure to comply with the building regulations to allow habitable use would be so extensive that it would indeed be tantamount to the construction of the completely new building. Being limited by the existing structure to provide habitable accommodation would compromise the potential for the use of passive aspects of the new build design, massing, materials, form and layout, to effectively contribute to the reduction in carbon emissions in a cost-effective manner. It is therefore submitted that the proposed development which promotes the redevelopment of a previously developed parcel of land accords with the provisions of Section 2 of Part A of Policy 17 of MPF 4 and presents legitimate and acceptable brownfield development proposals in this rural setting. This proposal should be regarded as complying with policies MPF 4 and LDP 2 as well as associated supplementary guidance. Planning permission in principle should be granted on this basis. 7. Also of relevance is MPF 4 Policy 9, Brownfield, Vacant and Derelict Land and Empty Buildings. This policy seeks to encourage, promote and facilitate the reuse of brownfield, vacant and derelict land and empty buildings and to help reduce the need for greenfield development. Policy 9 criteria A and D apply. For clarity, the disused and abandoned agricultural building is beyond economic repair with further damage to the roof structure during the December 2023 storms. 8. The proposed development site is visually and environmentally intrusive as existing. The large building is no longer fit for purpose, it's in a poor state of repair and dangerous to anyone in the vicinity. Building a domestic property on this land will be visually more pleasant and keeping with its surrounding as well as being more environmentally friendly. And the standard practice is to approve and condition that design and materials will be submitted when a full planning application is duly submitted. It is intended that a full planning application would be submitted once planning permission in principle has been approved subject to conditions. You've then got a list of your development plan policies in your papers, which are on pages 127 to 155. So the main issues for the local review body to consider is 1. This is an application for planning permission in principle. As such, there are no detailed matters relating to the proposed dwelling house. Scottish Government Planning Circular 3 2022 Development Management Procedures provides that it is for the applicant to decide what level of detail they wish to provide when making an application for planning permission in principle. It also advises that it is open to planning authorities to require further information under Regulation 24, further regulation, which necessary to determine the application. This can include details of the proposed dwelling house. It is noted that such a request has not been made during the consideration of the application by the case officer. Would members wish to request further details of the proposal via procedure note, or would members be happy to consider this case without any further such details of the dwelling house, noting that this is an application for permission in principle? 2. Would the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan? In particular, does the proposal meet terms of LDP 2 Policy H3 and the guidance set out in the adopted LDP 2 supplementary guidance in relation to the principle of the proposed development at this application site? Would the proposal fail to comply with MPF 4 Policies 9 and 17? In particular, would the proposal meet the terms of point 2 of the MPF 4 Policy 17 as claimed by the applicant? Does this proposal now accord with the terms of the development plan following the introduction of MPF 4 as part of the development plan? Specifically, can the proposed development be supported if it has not yet been demonstrated that the development will be suitably scaled, sited and designed to be in keeping with the character of the area, or should that be the subject of a separate assessment in a further application after planning permission in principle is granted? It is set out within MPF 4 Policy 17 that development proposals for all new home proposals require to be suitably scaled, sited and designed to be in keeping with the character of the area. Does the proposal represent a situation which would represent the refusal of a brownfield land as defined in the glossary within MPF 4? Reuse of a brownfield land as defined in the glossary within MPF 4, where a return to a natural state has not or will not happen without intervention. It is accepted that the proposed development would fail to comply with the terms of MPF 2 Policy H3 by virtue of the fact that the proposal would not represent the beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site as defined in the glossary of terms within LDP 2. It is agreed that the existing site is not demonstrably intrusive visually or environmentally. It is agreed that the condition of the site does not significantly detract from the amenity of the surrounding area. And if it is not considered that the proposal does not accord with the terms of the development plan, and there is a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development plan, if so, on what grounds would such a decision be made? and what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan. If members are minded to reverse the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to attach, if any? If members are minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required, and what additional policies, if any, would be referenced? Having outlined the documents within your papers, it now falls to the local review body to determine whether it has sufficient information to consider the review. It is confirmed that no representations from any party will be heard today. The options available to the local review body today for this case and the following three is that it can decide as sufficient information before it to enable it to determine the review today, request further information in the form of written representations. The local review body will require to state precisely the information it is seeking and who must provide it, resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who will be invited and on what matters, or resolve to hold a site visit, accompanied or unaccompanied. This can be done in conjunction with any of the above, but would obviously not allow a decision to be made today. If the local review body resolves that it has sufficient information and that no further procedure is required, then the local review body has the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice will include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. A planning advisor is present at your meeting in relation to this case and the following three cases today. It is confirmed that he has not had any involvement in this case prior to the submission of the notice of review, and he was not the case officer or the appointed officer for this application. He is purely here to provide independent advice as needed on matters of planning policy, law or process to the local review body. A solicitor is also present here today, and she will act independently if the local review body require a specific advice on matters of law. If members are clear and no further clarification is required, I will ask the Chair to lead the debate and in the first instance to lead the local review body through your agenda papers together and decide if you have sufficient information before you to make a determination today. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tracy, for that. It's absolutely spot on. I think at this point, Robert, we've asked you to go through the photographs. It's been about 6 months since we've done one of these, but so I'll pass over to Robert.
Thanks, Chair. There's a presentation of photographs that have been supplied by the appointed officer. I haven't been out on the site myself, so I'm reliant on the captions and images given. What I'm about to present on the screen and on the presentation you've got Microsoft Teams replicates what's in your papers on pages 159 to 163. So the first image is a view of the building, the shed on the left-hand side. You can see that just poking over the horizon, and South Lossett Farmhouse, which is on the right-hand side. So this is looking east from the access track. The second image is slightly closer. This is a view of the shed on the left-hand side and South Lossett Farmhouse, again looking east. This is a view of the shed looking northeast from the access road, and a view looking southeast, building on the left-hand side towards South Lossett Farmhouse. This is the front elevation of the building, so that is the west elevation of the shed, and this is the rear, the easterly elevation of the shed on the opposite side. This is the northern side elevation of the shed, and then you've got a photo showing the interior of the shed as it exists at the moment. This is the rear elevation, the north elevation of South Lossett Farmhouse, which sits opposite. And the final image I have is the front or south elevation of South Lossett Farmhouse.
Thanks so much, Robert, for that as well. So, remember, just before I go through the particular points of clarity in regards to the information that we've got in front of us, are there any questions or points in regards to the photographs that Robert's just presented to us? No one within the papers, nobody in the room is looking for any further clarification. I'll just check online. If not, feel free to come back at any point in time. Thanks again for that, Robert. So what I'll do is appoint a process, and if anybody can make a suggestion otherwise if they wish. So the first thing is, do we have enough information in regards to make a decision today? So what I'll do first, before we get to that stage, I'll go through the different parts of the report with information is requested. So notice of review dated the 9th August 24. submitted by CP Design Agents, it's pages 17 to 30. Members got any particular points, questions and such like in regards to that section within the report? Looking in the room and online, don't see anybody like to say, can come back to us at any point in time. No desperate rush to move on or anything like that. So the second part is the report handling, determining the delegated powers and related correspondence, which is page 33 to 99. Again, members, if there's any particular points, queries, comments in regards to that. Nope, take that as a no. Oh, Councillor Justy. Andrew.
Chair, I never actually had, I never received paper copies of this report, so I'm actually working off the laptop online on the public copy, so I don't have page numbers, but I'll bring my questions at the end after we've went through the process, just so that we're not, because I won't be able to refer to page numbers, unfortunately. I'll be able to refer to parts of the document, though.
Okay, thanks for that, Andrew. Thanks for that clarity. So that's fine. So we won't get anything for yourself, Andrew, because of your particular circumstances. Plan application form submitted the 12th of July 23, associated plans, support and information, which is page 109 to page 117. Just double check, nobody in the room or online looking for any points at this moment in time. Decision letter from the council on the 30th of July, it's page 121 to 124. Relevant extracts from the Fries and Galloway's Local Development Plan 2 and the National Plan Framework 4, 127 to 155. And the photos, as I've already asked that point, so I take it there's no one. Oh, there is.
Sorry, yeah, just about, I think, are we on page 122? 122, the refusals. Yeah, so I suppose the question is, where it says specifically the proposal is not considered to represent beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site. Just looking through that and the sort of the report before, I suppose the question is it only because it isn't full planning permission? They seem to be saying we can't give permission to this because it's not full planning permission, because then we can't get the support of MPF4 policy 17 because we don't know what the massing and the siting of the proposed house would be. Is that, can I ask, I suppose, can I ask whether that's correct? Is that a common thing to do? Say no, we won't get support from MPF4 policy 17 because this application doesn't include the details of what the house would look like.
Keith, I wonder, I'll definitely allow you to answer that, Robert, but I suppose what I'm trying to gather more than anything, have we got enough information today to make a decision, and then absolutely appropriate question come in, the relevant in regards to policies, how they should be applied and so on and so forth. But no, I still answer that though, because it is something that obviously was one of my questions too. But Robert, do you want to answer that anyways?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. My reading of the decision on page 122, you've got two specific reasons there. The proposal was not considered to represent beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site, and there's two elements to that. The existing site is not demonstrably intrusive visually or environmentally, and the condition of the site does not significantly detract from the amenity of the surrounding area. That's one reason for the refusal. The second reason, in addition to that, is it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated through this application for planning permission in principle that the proposed development would be suitably scaled, sited and designed to be in keeping with the character of the area. Now, as was explained in the Clerk's notes, planning authorities do have the power to request additional information, including details, in a case like this if they feel that would be necessary. But in doing so, the planning authority has to be convinced that that wouldn't be a futile exercise. So in other words, if you're going to ask for that information, it should be decisive in the outcome of the case. My reading of it is, and I don't know this for sure, but I suspect the case officer has not asked for that information because it doesn't overcome point one. So the lack of information, yes, is one of the reasons, but even if you had that information in front of you, my reading is it wouldn't overcome the first point of the determination, and I suspect that's the reason why the officer's not asked for the detail. It's not good practice to ask someone for detail and they provide it, and then you say, well, we're still going to refuse your application anyway. So there's two reasons for it. One of them is due to a lack of information, but the second one isn't, depending on the level of information you've got in front of you.
We'll come back to that point, Keith. Yep, it's a point I picked up on myself in regards to that. That's probably my own experience. So, photographs, we already asked the question on, you've asked that question there. So, again, we'll come back to that point. Have we got enough information in regards to making a determination today? I think it was said within the request for the review, weren't they overly interested in a site visit? But what do members think in regards to having a potential having a site visit here? And this is where the point. So if we make this decision now, we'll carry on. Then we can. So in the room, I'm getting shakes of the head that a site visit's not necessary, I would say. It's the feeling that I'm getting. So I'm just looking online as well. I just want to make sure that's bottomed out before we go any further. Okay, members, are we comfortable that we've got enough information in regards to making a determination today? Yeah, I'm getting nods in the room. I'm okay with that today as well. That's what's been requested formally by the review applicant as well. Right, okay. Right, and I suppose we'll come back to, I will open it up for members in regards to what their thoughts are in regards to this particular case. But I think, just touching on that particular point, and I felt it was a bit odd, and I've been in that situation before where it's a ground for refusal actually, is what Robert's just outlined, is that the lack of information, but the lack of information wasn't requested, and ultimately I don't think it's absolutely, it felt odd to me. It just felt odd to me that the information wasn't requested, but actually we got refused, but used for a grounds for refusal. It's maybe immaterial anyways, Robert, but it's something I did pick up on myself. I don't know if there's any, so I'm just picking up the same point as you. Because it's a ground for refusal, maybe in the ultimate, I suppose we could ignore it in real terms or otherwise. But I felt it odd that they were asked, it was being refused on a particular grounds when the information hadn't been applied for. Any further comments in regards to that or no, in regards to advice?
I think, and this is guesswork on my part, because obviously I haven't discussed this with the case officer, and the report doesn't make it clear, but that there are two reasons for refusal here which are based in the relevant policies. And one is the proposed development should be suitably scaled, sited and designed. Now, because they've opted to apply for planning permission in principle, those details aren't part of the submission, so that an assessment can't be made. At which point, I suspect the case officers then thought, right, am I going to ask for that information or not? Because they do have the power to do that. I suspect when you look at the first reason, so the view that the existing site is not demonstrably intrusive visually or environmentally, and the condition of the site does not significantly detract from the amenity of the surrounding area, because that isn't the case officer's view is probably that even if you had that information, that first kind of objection is not overcome. So you wouldn't then ask someone for further detail and ask them to go to the trouble and expense and time of producing that if it's not actually going to overcome the other reason for refusal of the case, because that's still going to exist. So if you did have the information, you know, or the case officer did, it might have resulted in two reasons for refusal, essentially, two specific reasons becoming one, but it's not going to change the outcome. And I think that's what's happened here. I suspect the case officer's thought about that and asked himself, am I going to ask for the extra information here? Is it going to fundamentally alter the outcome of the case? Now, as the local review body, you're looking at this decision, you're making a de novo determination today. So it strikes me that you need to kind of decide if you're in agreement with these two reasons for refusal. If you don't agree with the first reason for refusal, then that's the point at which you maybe want the extra information to see if you think that point 2 for the refusal is met. You know, so in other words, if the detailed information would actually address the second point of refusal, if you think that point 1 isn't something you would like to uphold.
Thanks very much for that. So, I don't know if you want back in or not, Keith, but I know Laura's wanting to speak as well, so let Laura in. If you do want in, it's Councillor Justy after that. Laura?
Thank you, Chair. It was just to suggest, rather than seeing it as a refusal, to almost kind of flip it on its head. And if you look at policy 17, when the applicant has put this in and has said, no, I think policy 17 has been made out, if you actually look at the wording of policy 17, it says that in order to fulfil policy 17, you have to be able to show that the development is suitably scaled, sited and designed. So they haven't actually provided that information. So how can you say you've complied with policy 17 if you haven't actually given the information that the case officer required? So rather than seeing it as the council are being obstructive and refusing it, if you're saying, I'm relying on this policy, you haven't given the full information to enable it. But as Robert says, you've then got the second part of it, which is looking at NPF 4 in the whole, which we're encouraged to do, and looking at policy 9, which is the wider policy about brownfield sites. The intention behind it is not just that if you've got a building there, it is automatically brownfield. There's other considerations to make. And because of those other considerations, even if that information had been provided, what the case officer is saying is they still don't think that policy supported it.
No, thanks very much for that. Keith, were you wanting any further comments? No.
Yeah, I suppose the question was, are we happy with the definition of what a brownfield site is? Because from what the applicant's saying, it's a barn that's been left and hasn't been used for 20 years. It's not going to be changed unless something's done to it, sort of thing. So I suppose I was thinking that's one of the refusals, the brownfield site issue, whether it is a brownfield site, whether it's not a brownfield site. And I was thinking that perhaps from my reflection, when you see the photos, you could quite easily regard it as a brownfield site if it's not being used. I don't know how the applicant is meant, or how we are meant to judge whether it's a disused building, or whether it's a building that could be used in the future for some farming that the applicant isn't going to do anyway.
I think that's the absolute nub of this conversation today in regards to the determination. I just wanted to get that first thing in regards to the further information potentially being asked for or should have been submitted. In simple terms, just come back to that point, I've seen it in the past where a standard building site with somewhere between 500 and say 900 square metres, the footprint of the house would vary between say 90 and 150 square metres, and that's then you can quite easily apply that formula in regards to whether a house along with any amenity land and such like would be able to comply with that. I've seen that being applied in the past. So picking up, we're going to listen to your point first, Dave. I'm going to bring in Councillor Justy, and I'll certainly have some comments in regards to what you said as well, then we'll come to you, Robert, after that. Councillor Justy, Andrew.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. Maybe I should have raised this a wee bit earlier, this part. Chair, we had a decision notice on this application on the 30th of July 2024, but there was a letter or an email from the applicant, or the agent, sorry, to the case officer on the 16th of November 23 for the decision to be made. Do we know why there's been such a delay in a decision letter being put out? But moving on to actual policy terms, I'm on policy 17 in the NPF 4, and I'm looking at A2 and A3, which is the reuse of a brownfield land where a return to a natural state has not or will not happen without intervention. Here, I think it's clear that you will need a digger or mechanical intervention to actually return this to a natural state. And then you go into the next point, which is free, which reuses or a redundant or unused building. I think it's been demonstrated that this building isn't reusable and it is redundant. I don't believe it's a part of the farmstead anymore. I think the fields have been sold, from my understanding. And if we move further on to in policy 17 and NPF 4 on to B, development proposals for new homes in rural areas will consider how the development will contribute towards local living and take into account identified local housing needs, economic considerations and transport needs of the developments as appropriate for the rural location. This council this year has declared a housing emergency and that we have a severe lack of houses. So I would suggest that a house in this location would probably be to the greater benefit of the local housing market. And I'll leave it at that for the moment, Chair. But I'm going to be getting an update on this laptop in about 10 minutes, I think. So I might blip out and back in. I hope I don't.
Same happened to me, Councillor, just the other day. So if that does happen and we're in mid-flow, we'll stop until you come back on. Councillor Howie, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. It's just regarding objection point 1 about whether or not this building is visually intrusive. That's surely just conjecture. It's a personal opinion from the reporting officer in their mind. I think anybody looking at it would say it is intrusive. It's an ugly building, basically corrugated iron and breeze block, and you would have to say probably anything would be an improvement on that. So I'm just saying my opinion obviously differs, but I don't know how that stands procedurally wise. But if it's just a matter of personal opinion, certainly my views differ from the case officers in this matter.
Thanks so much for that, Ian. So I'll bring in Councillor Johnston, as in Maureen, and then we'll ask Robert to make some comments, because I think we really need to discuss in quite a bit of detail in regards to the brownfield site element. Maureen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at policy H3 for housing in the countryside, and there's sort of the agricultural land, like brownfield site here, and this building. Now, this could set a precedent for the future just on this situation here, looking at all the housing in the countryside on H3. I just wanted to bring that point. Thank you.
Okay, no, you're absolutely right in regards to that. I would say each case in its own merits, but Robert, I'm going to ask you to come... Oh, sorry, Laura, I was going to bring in you in first, then I'll come to Laura. Robert, sorry, Laura.
Thank you, Chair, and also thank you to Councillor Johnson. You're absolutely right. The Council has got established policy in H3 where we clearly say that a brownfield site does not include agriculture or all buildings, and we do have NPF 4 with a definition of brownfield which does not include that exemption. Now, as the documents you've got in front of you have highlighted, and as Robert frequently says to the panel, where there's an incompatibility between the two, then NPF 4 will take a precedence. However, the approach taken by Dumfries and Galloway Council has always been, or has been since NPF 4 came in, is that this should not be seen as an incompatibility. It's a further honing of the policy to take care of our local surroundings, given the fact that we are a rural community, and that is not something which in NPF 4 disallows. It's not an inconsistency or an incompatibility. It's a further honing for our local area.
Thanks so much. We'll come back to those points, Maureen. Robert?
Thanks, Chair. There's a number of interesting issues there. I think the delay in the decision notice, I did notice that myself. I have no idea what's happened there at all. But there's obviously been a time lag with the agent asking for the case to be determined and the actual determination being made. Nevertheless, the notice of review was timely made, so we've accepted it and it's in front of you today. Brownfield development, I mean, really, I think the way I'm reading this is you've got a decision, obviously, and the decision notice appears in your papers on pages 121 to 124. You can see the clear reason now. There's three key policies here. You have policy H3 within LDP2, and then you've got policies 9, brownfield development, etc., in NPF 4, and also policy 17 of NPF 4. So when you're looking at that, you're looking at two specific reasons for proposals being considered to be contrary to those policies. So it sets that out. In terms of the broader principle, as Laura has said, you've got policy H3 and LDP2, the Council's Local Development Plan 2, which was adopted back in October 2019. NPF 4 became part of the development plan in February 2023. So you can read for yourself what NPF 4 policy 17 says, but in principle, it's accepting brownfield development, not unconditionally, I would hasten to add, and this is the whole nub of the issue, but it's allowing that, and it's setting a definition of brownfield development which differs from the Council's Local Development Plan Policy 2. So the definition of brownfield development in NPF 4 is in Annex 4, which is on page 244 of that document, and it says, this is the definition: previously developed land and premises, including the curtilage of buildings which may still be partially occupied or used, most commonly associated with derelict urban land with redundant industrial buildings. This is the LDP2 definition rather, excludes agriculture, forestry and previously used land which now has nature conservation or recreation value. So that was the definition in LDP2. Apologies, I'm reading out the wrong document there. NPF 4's definition is of brownfield. It says land which has previously been developed The term may cover vacant or derelict land, land occupied by redundant or unused buildings, and developed land within the settlement boundary where further intensification of use is considered acceptable. So the change that has happened is the definition of brownfield land. And because of the introduction of MPF 4, Policy 17, in broad terms, a brownfield site is considered to be acceptable, but there's criteria associated with that. LDP2 Policy H3 doesn't disappear, it doesn't cease to exist. An element of that is incompatible with MPF 417, but not in its entirety, so you don't discard the whole policy on that basis. It's just that you have to look at that with a changed perspective in relation to the definition of a brownfield site. My reading of the decision, as I've said before, is partly because something hasn't been demonstrated, because the detail hasn't been submitted to do that, if you like. But regardless of that, there's a first reason slightly ahead of it, which the case officer doesn't think has been met, and therefore it doesn't comply with the policy on that basis. So you've got one element which clearly the case officer doesn't think complies with the policy, and the second element is that because of the lack of information, they've not been able to make a proper judgment on the second aspect. And like I've said before, I don't think they've asked for that information because it's not going to be a game-changing submission, and it's going to cause time, expense, and additional kind of hassle to the applicant. So that is my reading of the case. And what you're not looking at here, the case officer isn't saying this is getting refused because this is contrary to MPF 4 Policy 17 because of the brownfield land definition. That's not the issue. The issue is more nuanced. When you look at the policies holistically, it's because of concerns in relation to the site, and the other concerns being in relation to something that hasn't been demonstrated.
No, thanks so much. Thanks so much for that, Robert. So it's I suppose it says to get into the debate. It's only yourself, Stephen, that hasn't said anything in regards to this yet. Probably I've mentioned a couple of things, so feel free to come in if you feel that necessary. We'll come back to it. So for me, it is the nub of the case is how the committee determines NPF 4 Policy 17 in regards to that, and is it superior in regards to, I suppose, the nuances within LDP 2 Policy H3 in particular. So Councillor Howie mentioned. I mean, when you look at it in the face of it, you get the photographs. We could get them back up if needed, but it's a lump of a building. And chances are high that, because you look at it, could almost individualise it by the size of the bays within the building, what the actual dimensions and sizes are. But it is intrusive, to say the least, I would say, in comparison to a residential dwelling. So I've definitely got sympathy in regards to granting a permission for a residential on this, but then it's, I suppose the point I was trying to raise earlier, what does that mean going on from here? Because I've asked the question a number of times at planning application committees and other places, is okay, whether it's the Department of Planning and Environment Appeals or whether it's a local review body, when a case is made, how does that then affect further decision making by the planning authority or the council as a planning authority? That's maybe something we should touch on to a degree, because if we make a decision, I think it quite clearly sets, as Maureen said, a potential precedent. Laura's already touched on that. What does that mean going on? I think we need to have the fullest information. So, Laura, I think you want to come in on that.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to pick up on one of your points about the visual intrusion. What's not been asked for here is an ability to demolish something that's intrusive. What's been asked for here is an ability to develop something on a site that is being used currently for a very different purpose. If it was just the fact that the person did not wish to have that anymore, we wouldn't be here today. The reason why we're here is not so much because it's visually intrusive, it's because what they're wanting to do is to build a residential dwelling on the site of an agricultural building.
Yeah, so just when I'm reading the first reason for refusal, so it says the existing site is not demonstrably intrusive. Councillor Howie, and I would agree with him, says, well, that's a personal reflection. I would say it is. He says it is, but the case officer clearly doesn't think it is. So I think that's the point I was trying to make there.
No, absolutely no. It's more just be quite clear. We're not preventing somebody from taking away something that they find intrusive. What we're saying is that we are not then permitting you to put a residential development on top of that.
Yes, that's the decision that's been made. Yeah. So we are members obviously looking at that and saying, like, okay, with all the information that the case officer had at that time, without reintroducing any further information at this point, do we agree with that in real terms? That's the point. So, Councillor Walters. Keith.
Yeah, I'm stuck on that first refusal thing, I must admit, because what we appear to be saying is that an old disused building is less demonstrably intrusive than the possibility of a dwelling, which doesn't seem to make sense to me, and I can understand what the solicitor was saying about what we're not doing, but because presumably the applicant could knock the building down whenever they wanted to, and then we'd be left with a brownfield site. So it doesn't really, I don't know, it doesn't fit well with me that we're saying that this particular building is less intrusive than the possibility of what may be developed there. That seems...
So come back, because it says complicated, and Robert mentioned de novo is what he said. So we're going right back to the start, and we're reflecting on a decision that's been made. So I think now it's for us to actually say, okay, we can see the reasons why it's been refused, but we're actually looking at this with fresh eyes, right from the new scratch. And if we feel it actually is intrusive, and it'd be more beneficial to have a residential dwelling in there, rather than leave it become derelict and can't potentially be demolished, then that's for us to decide that. I think that's pretty much the case. That's the remit of this committee. Right, Laura? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Can I suggest then, if you're finding difficulty with the language of, intrusive or that, have a look at policy H3 and also policy 9 and policy 17, and look at that and see on your own decision whether you feel that there are grounds on those policies to grant it, and also bear in mind what you have in front of you by means of information. There's been comments made in the note of review about the building being derelict, the building being dangerous. Have you actually got that information in front of you other than what's been put in that note?
No, so that's why I thought about site visit, because there's claims being made in regards to that. That's why I mentioned it right at the beginning. Would that be an appropriate way to take it forward, the site visit, see it itself? Because when I look at it, I'll put my personal view on the line. I've seen many a worse building than that. It's not in a good state of repair, I can guarantee you that, but I've seen much worse dilapidate. And it will, but it does state quite clearly it needs investment to bring it up to a standard where it'll be fit for purpose, potentially used, but I think it also states that the preference is to demolish anyways, because it's no longer it'll no longer be a building that'll be used for agricultural reasons because of and that was the sale. It was bought for residential purposes. That's also been outlined within the report, from what I could see earlier. So, members, I'll still open it up to yourselves. It's up to yourselves. Councillor Justy, Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I'm reading policy 9 on MPF 4, which has been alluded to, and I'm looking at 9A, development proposals that will result in the sustainable reuse of a brownfield land, including vacant and derelict land and buildings, whether permanent or temporary, will be supported. In determining whether reuse is sustainable, the biodiversity value of the brownfield land, which is naturalised, should be taken into account. Again, it's not specific enough in excluding rural agricultural buildings in MPF 4. And that's our superseding document right now. That's the superseding policy. And I'm thinking back to an application that was in with us last year. I think you had it. I think you were the chair for that application as well, and Robert was there as well. I know that. And that's is it West Galdnock? Robert, you might know that. Have we created a precedent there where that is the same? Is that the same way that we can view this the policy and this policy? Can we apply that here today? If that makes sense.
Thanks, Chair. I don't want to introduce additional information here, but there was a case which you can look up online which came to the local review body last year, which was at West Galdnock Farm near Stonykirk, and I did have a chance to look at this. Now, each application is determined on its own merits, but my recollection was the key determining policies in relation to that case were the same as you have in front of you today. So the key policies are policy H3 of LDP2, the associated supplementary guidance, MPF 4 policy 9 and MPF 4 policy 17. So the determination in relation to the development plan, the key part of it is a combination of all of these policies, not one in isolation, which is where I would come back to MPF 4 policy 9. That is one aspect of the consideration that's in front of you today. As far as I'm concerned, when I look at the decision that's been taken, it isn't saying that this is not brownfield development, it's just saying that it does not meet the collective suite of policies in the development plan. That's the decision that's been reached by the appointed officer in this case. It's not saying this is unacceptable because it doesn't meet the definition of brownfield land. That isn't the issue. The determining issues are more nuanced than that, and we've discussed that. So I think the assessment does take account of the updated definition of brownfield land that is set out in the annex to MPF 4. But in the West Galdnoch case, I don't think it sets a precedent in the sense that each case falls to be considered on its own merit. And you're also not looking at the case there where it wasn't as if they said, well, that was a brownfield site in principle, and this isn't. That's not the case. It's been looked at in the same way.
Andrew, you okay with that?
It's just that it's the word nuance, and it's the idea that we are that the council's making decisions on nuance is not a comforting one to me.
Okay, so we'll come back to that point. Councillor Stephen Thompson is the first time speaker. Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so couple of things here. I'm not sure about I'm sort of a bit uncomfortable with the word precedent in that obviously we're just looking at this on its own merits, and I wouldn't expect that just because the local review body decides to do something in a particular case that then somehow guides what future planning officer decisions would do, because I'm sure they'll professionally just assess it based on the policy framework. But I'm interested in this idea that the NPF 4 hones our existing local sort of policy. But it does feel a wee bit, there's this sort of tension between, well, I think there's an acceptance that, yeah, this is effectively agricultural brownfield, potentially, and that, but then accepting that, I'm not clear that that the strength of the reason given for the original decision is clear enough about what aspects overrule that to allow a planning permission in principle. Do you know what I mean? So I think but it does feel a wee bit like putting the cart before the horse. So I think the idea that if you wanted to remove something that was not suitable, then you could do that first, and then you could determine, okay, this brownfield site, what can we do with it? But in theory, anybody could come in, not even the owner or the buyer or anybody, could just put in an application for any old site and say, oh, I want to change this to this. But somebody else would be saying, yeah, but it's not finished using it yet. Do you know what I mean? I'm not really sure about how to conceptualise this one, but that's an observation for the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Stephen. So bring back Councillor Justy, Andrew.
Chair, I think if we're coming to the end of the debate here, I'm going to bring forward my thoughts and perhaps a motion. And I move that we reverse the officer's decision and approve this application, as I believe it meets MPF 4 policy 17A and points in 2 and 3. I believe it aligns with policy MPF 4 policy 17B. I believe it does conform with policy 9. I don't see the nitty-gritty of the nuance here, and I think this does conform with policy, and I would move that we approve.
Thanks so much for that, Andrew. I'm going to ask the obvious question. Is MD otherwise minded rather than a seconder? If not, we'll talk about conditions and take advice for yourself, Robert and Laura. Stephen, Councillor Thompson.
I think it would be fair to say that I don't wholeheartedly agree, put it that way. I can understand why the decision seemed to be arrived at. I'm just sort of not sure about the strength of it in terms of if it's sort of accepted as being agricultural brownfield, but there are other policy reasons why, on balance, it should be refused. And I wouldn't necessarily support that motion as it stands. But I'm not comfortable enough to actually put forward an amendment, so I'm just I'd like to hear what other members have to say, basically. Thank you.
Okay, okay. I'll just before you come in, Maureen, because I'll just a couple of comments. I've not said that much myself, I don't think, but what's resonating in the back of my mind? So about 7 weeks ago now, we met with Paul McLennan, the housing minister. He came down to special to meet us, and he's coming back, I think, hopefully this month or next. Housing emergency came up across the whole of Scotland, and Fleece-and-Galloway in particular. That's already been mentioned. It was with the Deputy First Minister, big chunk of the day on Monday. Again, these type of points have been brought up. The emergency we're in, within the restricted or the constrained finances that we've got, try to, as Strategic Housing Authority and Planning Authority for that matter, how we address all these problems for local people. So for me, with those type of high level pressures, as well as try to interpret something between a local development plan, which is going through a process of renewal because it's come to the end of its life, and the National Planning Framework, which seems to be trying to streamline, supersede or make improvements. Some folk would say it's maybe making a hash of it too, but for me it's actually in this case it's making an improvement. So I would agree with Andrew going forward in regards to some kind of proposal. We'd obviously need conditions attached to that as well, but we'll come to that point. So Maureen within the room had her hand up next, so I'll bring Maureen in. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you, Chair. No, I just have a few worries around this proposal as well, accepting it as such. Basically, because as I said in the beginning there, I'm looking at the policy H3 here and the reasons, for housing in the countryside, and the fact that the shed is, as we said, intrusive. We could still just demolish the shed, change the use of the land from agriculture, and then look at building at a later stage. But I'm not happy with sort of the way it is at the moment. I have a few issues on this one. Thank you.
That's no problem whatsoever, Maureen. So we have a proposal. We have comments from others in regards to Councillor Thompson. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just, if anything, you've inspired me the other way, and just listening to Councillor Johnson. I really think, this is by its name, it's local review body, and I think while we are aware of the overarching national concerns about housing, I think we still have to be very careful about looking at this in this particular case on its own merits, because we could get carried away with tides and currents elsewhere, but this is actually just a specific site in our region. We've got policies that apply to it, and a decision's been made, and I appreciate that you're engaged at a national level with other ministers, etc., and I appreciate that, and there's a lot of good work to be done, but it's not really, I really don't think that's relevant in this particular case, and I just want to say that. But I don't think it would be right just to sort of overturn this decision. I don't think it's a strong enough reason to overturn the decision. I'm not entirely comfortable with all the elements of the decision, and I'm sure some of it could be subjectively interpreted differently, but I don't think that's enough of a reason to overturn it. So I don't know if that aligns me slightly with Councillor Johnson, but yeah, thank you.
Stephen, is there an actual proposal there, do you think?
I suppose it better just to make it something concrete. So I would say that we uphold the original decision.
Thanks for that. Maureen? And Maureen's nodding. She looks like she's seconding that. Maureen?
Yes, I will. Yeah, thank you. I'll go with that decision.
Okay, thanks so much for that. So we have a formal motion on the table. I'll second Councillor Justice, and I'll come to Robert in regards to that, because what we're looking for also is the competency side and potential conditions to Robert.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously the kind of motion is something for the clerk. It was just in relation to possible planning conditions. That's all I wanted to comment on at this stage. Looking at it, and this is just my advice, I think condition 1 would be a planning permission in principle timescale condition, which is standard, which basically means you have to submit your further application within 3 years. It used to be known as reserved matters, but now it's approval of matters specified in conditions. You've then got a time scale after that to get approval and implement the development, which is 2 years after that usually. So there are also 4 kind of fairly standard conditions regarding further details to be submitted as part of the further application for matters specified in conditions. So those cover things like siting, design, finishes, landscaping, treatment of the cartilage, etc., etc. Basically everything you would expect to see in a full planning application. But these are details brought forward almost like stage 2 of the application. There's obviously no detail there at the moment beyond the location and the site plan, which isn't binding. So roads conditions, I'm looking at the papers. So on page 45, you've got 2 recommended conditions from the Council's Roads Planning Team Leader, and that is basically looking for surfacing of the vehicle access to the house. So that's surfaced from the U134W public road for the first 5 metres. And then the other condition is a parking and turning requirement in relation to the single dwelling house, so that you've got sufficient car parking spaces and a turning area so the vehicle can go into and out of the site in forward gear. My only other suggestion beyond that is if you have any, noting that the site is quite prominent, do you feel that it's releasing to an existing building, would you have any desire for guiding conditions? For example, to have the house being single storey, or any particular design requirements to guide the further development? Are you happy to leave that open and then it would be subject to further assessment?
Andrew?
Chair, I think if we're going to go down that route, I would rather see either a bungalow or a story and a half be implemented here. I don't think that a full 2-storey building would be appropriate, because it would maybe take away from the visual impact of the current farmstead building.
Okay, Robert's captured that, and with the rest of the conditions, if it was to be approved, are you happy enough with them, Andrew?
I'm happy enough with the other conditions.
Thank you, thanks very much for that. I'll open it up to other members if they've got any points. We have got a motion now on the table and an amendment, but Tracy, maybe, have you got any comments in regards to the comments? It sounds competent to me, but just to be sure.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so I've noted here Councillor Justice's amendment. So the wording we would use would be that you're asking members to agree to reverse the decision of the appointed officer and grant approval as an exception to policy on the grounds that, and that's where I would need you to perhaps, if you like, beef up your wording slightly, because I've got here noted that it meets with MPF 17A 2 and 3 and aligns with policy 4. But if we're saying as we're approving it as an exception to policy, I would need, and I'll look to Laura for a bit of guidance, I would need probably a bit more from you on the reasons that it's being approved as an exception to policy. I don't know if Laura wants to add anything else.
Would it be an exception to policy or not? I don't think it would have, would it?
If Councillor Juicy could perhaps clarify whether he was saying he thought it complied with policy 17 or if he thought it was an exemption to policy 17.
Happy to come in, Chair. Chair, I think it complies with policy 17 and 19. I don't think that policy 17 and 19 are explicit enough in saying that. So one of the bits of advice we've had today was that our LDP is precise in saying that rural buildings, agricultural buildings are a part of they are not included as brownfield sites. MPF 4 doesn't have that information there. It's not explicit that an old building such as this, which was used for agriculture, is excluded from that. So I'm going with MPF 4, and I believe that this does reuse a brownfield land where there's no natural return without excavation or diggers or mechanical use. I also think it doesn't reuse a redundant or unused building. It changes that, because that redundant and reused, that building's not reusable. So that's not possible. And then when we go back to number 9, so I've got the pages, I'm flicking through the different things on my laptop here. We go back to policy number 9, which is development proposals that will result in the sustainable reuse of a brownfield land, including vacant and derelict land and buildings, whether permanent or temporary, will be supported. Well, in policy 9, that's the golden nugget there. It will be supported if it's going to reuse derelict land and buildings. So I think I don't know if that's beefed that up enough for you, Chair, but that's clear in my head what that is.
I think that the important point was that there is a big difference between, I think, this committee and the Planning Application Committee. So if it was the Planning Application Committee, we would be looking for an exception to policy. But I think with this committee, if the committee feels it complies with policy, that going back to de novo, that is the case. It is complying. I think what you've outlined to me, unless I'm wrong there, Tracy, you're saying that you feel it does comply, and you've outlined your reasons why. Are you okay with that, Tracy? And Laura, you want to speak on that?
Thank you, Chair. So just so that we're absolutely clear, what Councillor Gustie is saying is that he's taking his support from NPF policies 9 and 17, not mentioning the local development plan policy H3, so in effect saying that he's relying more on national planning framework rather than the local policy, so that whereas before I had suggested that rather than seeing it as an inconsistency, it should be seen as a honing, he is seeing that the policies 9 and 17, where it respects to brownfield sites in an agricultural setting, is actually taking primacy over our local policy, just to be quite clear that that is the implication of what he's saying.
I think that's what you're saying, Andrew, isn't it?
Yes, Chair. As far as I've been made aware and from what I've been trained in this process, MPF 4 is the overarching document, and that is what we look at first and foremost when we are deciding on these applications.
Okay, so we're all clear of the decision that we're making, potentially or otherwise. Right, I think we'll go to the vote now, then, if that's the case. Tracy?
Thanks, Chair. So a motion is proposed by Councillor Stephen Thompson, seconded by Councillor Maureen Johnston, and that is to uphold the decision of the appointed officer and refuse for the grounds that are already displayed within your report. The amendment is proposed by Councillor Andrew Giusti, seconded by Councillor Ian Crothers, and that's to reverse the decision of the appointed officer and approve the application as the development does comply with National Planning Framework Policies 9 and Policies 17, and that's in relation to Policy 9, Section A, which is a development proposal that will result in a sustainable reuse of brownfield land, including vacant and derelict land and buildings, whether permanent or temporary. And for Policy 17, Sections 2 and 3 highlighted the reused brownfield land would return to a natural state, nor would it happen without intervention, and reuse a redundant or unused building. Happy with that?
Chair.
Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Giusti,
Sorry,
Andrew.
Tracy. Part of that policy 17, I've also included B, so I've cancelled off my there. No, one second, let me just find policy 17 again, because I was there.
Yeah.
So I've also included policy 17B, and that development proposals for new homes in rural areas will consider how the development will contribute towards local living and take into account identified local housing needs. And I think that with the national and local declaration of a housing emergency, I think that that has demonstrated the need.
Chair, if I could suggest, we haven't actually, apart from obviously the Chair's comments about the national situation, we haven't actually had any information put in front of us by the applicant to substantiate that.
Andrew, I think the point I was trying to emphasise there, I apologise for the way I put it, was that actually the council has declared its own housing emergency, and that had been touched on earlier. But like I said, the pressure coming down, the question put for the Scottish Government quite rightly, so what are you doing about this? Because we're asking them for their funding, so on and so forth. What are you doing about it? So they're quite right to be saying that. So, Councillor Stephen Thompson, I think you're wanting to come in. Then I'll come back to you, Andrew.
Yeah, I think I would suggest I think it's probably safer if we stick to the policy stuff for this, because comments like that, while they do set a context, don't necessarily. I think we established at the start that we felt we had enough information in front of us with the information provided in the pack. Now we seem to be straying into areas that aren't actually included in the pack. So, it was either like go for a site visit, get more information, etc. if there's not enough there, or we seem to be sort of arbitrarily adding information and opinions into stuff when it's just safe enough sticking to the policy probably. We've got a motion and amendment, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, let's try to get to that point, Stephen. You're absolutely right. Councillor Giusti. So is that second part, are you wanting to leave it the way it was, or are you wanting to add that second part? I think the advice is not to.
Yeah, I'm happy to go with the advice not to, but I don't think it's arbitrary. This council has made a policy that we believe that there is a housing emergency, and this is one of the few areas and committees that this council can actually make a change to that. but I'm not going to put that in if it's going to ruffle feathers.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that. We'll go to the vote then, Tracy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So the motion was to uphold the decision and the amendment is to reverse the decision and approve. Chair?
Amendment.
Councillor Giusti?
Sorry, what was the motion? What was the amendment there, sorry? Was that the motion?
Motion is to uphold the decision and refuse, and the
All
amendment
right.
is to reverse.
Sorry, I'm amendment.
Councillor Howie?
Amendment.
Councillor Johnston?
Motion.
Councillor Thompson?
Motion.
Councillor Walters?
Motion.
Thank you. There's 3 votes for the amendment and 3 votes to the motion. Chair, would you like to exercise your right to a casting vote?
Just the same as previously. Thank you.
The amendment.
Yeah.
Thank you. The application has been reversed and it will be approved, and will attach all the conditions outlined by the planning advisor earlier.
Thank you. Thanks very much. 7 is in if I got Kim was off here. So item number 5, members, is our next one. Again, Tracy, I think let's give ourselves a wee chance to get our notes, members, a couple of minutes, and Tracy will outline the process again. Right, members, that's as good to go. So Tracy will outline the process. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So we'll move on to item 5. Land near Altain Sandhead, Stranraer. Refusal of planning permission for erection of a dwelling house and installation of air source heat pump, septic tank and soakaway, and change of use of agricultural land to form domestic garage. Ground reference 240104 FUL. So again, you've got your papers there outlining the notice of review, which is pages 171 to 181. Your report on handling, pages 185 to 198. Got the observations of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review, pages 201 to 203. You've in this pack also got additional comments of the applicant's agent on observations of the appointed officer, pages 207 to 209. Planning application form, which was submitted on the 18th of January 2024, and associated plans and information, pages 213 to 259. The decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council, dated the 2nd of July 2024, pages 263 to 266. You then got a list of your local development plan policy 2 and the national plan framework 4, pages 269 to 297. Followed by the photos of the application site, pages 301 to 304. So grounds for refusal are set out in your papers on page 264, which is that the proposed development is contrary to Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2, Policy H3, and the Supplementary Guidance and National Planning Framework Policies 9 and 17, which only permit the erection of new dwelling houses in the countryside in particular circumstances, and none of these circumstances apply in this case. Specifically, the proposal is not considered to represent beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site, as 1, the existing site is not demonstrably intrusive visually or environmentally, and the condition of the site does not significantly detract from the amenity of the surrounding area. 2, the development would extend beyond the previously developed area into greenfield land and would exceed the minimum requirement to remove dereliction. And 3, the proposed development would not be suitably scaled, sited and designed to be in keeping with the character of the area. The applicant has requested that the review be dealt with by means of review of the relevant information that has been provided without any further procedure, and you can find that on page 174. So the grounds stated in the notice of review and further comments from the applicant's agent of the appointed officer, pages 177 to 181 and 207 to 209, are in summary. 1, the MPF 4 is to be relied upon as the pre-eminent and most relevant development plan document to be referred to when determining applications such as this one. It is made clear in guidance that where incompatibility exists between the provisions of the National Planning Framework and the Local Development Plan, whichever of these is the latter as date is to prevail. 2, in recent case to the local review body meeting of the 1st of June 2024, the local review body unanimously overturned a refusal by delegating powers under special circumstance at West Galdenock Farm, reference 221165 FUL. It is accepted and understood that each case should be determined on its own merits, but in this instance, the near identical premises of the application cannot be ignored, and significant weight should be afforded to that decision when determining the current application. At 4.8 of the report on handling, the case officer identifies incompatibility between the policies of MPF 4 and LDP 2, in particular in relation to criterion 2 of MPF 4 policy 17 rural homes, but little if any weight has been offered to that statement in the context of the decision-making process other than there, and it is not evident elsewhere in the report or considered with significant regard in the overall outcome. The removal of this isolated concrete frame building with fibre cement roof, sheeting and the side wall cladding and walls of exposed red brickwork which are overgrown, and is in its replacement with the dwelling house proposed would not only offer a meaningful visual improvement but also an environmental improvement to the setting. Neither MPF 4 or LDP 2 require any evidence to be brought forward to demonstrate that the building is redundant for agricultural purposes and could not be brought back into use. MPF 4 simply requires, for the purposes of defining what constitutes a brownfield site, that the land has past use or been previously developed, and that the signs of that use will not be removed without some sort of an intervention. The pictures submitted with the application clearly show that the building has been redundant for some time. The design of the building is not commonplace in rural landscape. Concrete frame agricultural buildings are not commonplace, and most of it, all agricultural buildings, are either stone built with slate roofs or steel frame buildings with either box profile cladding or timber Yorkshire board style cladding, and certainly they are rarely, if ever, infilled between portal frames with exposed red brickwork, but common brickwork. The building and the site condition significantly detracts from the visual amenity of the locality. The building will deteriorate further. The building is not traditional, typical or commonplace and would not constitute a traditional building worthy of retention and conversion. Therefore, the building has no value which would necessitate its retention. The only element of the proposed development extending beyond the footprint of the vacant building and surrounding concrete areas would be the proposed septic tank and soakaway, which should be situated underground. The proposed dwelling house with its elongate frontage reflects the nature of the current building's form. It sits predominantly over the footprint of the building to be demolished as required by policy, maintains distances from existing boundaries similar to that of the existing building, does not seek to alter or amend the current boundary design, and does not impact or become overbearing in relation to the proximity of the current building to the public roads. The proposed dwelling house is modest in height and modest in its defence to the existing building with regard to the height of the roof apex, and is consistent with policy guidelines with regard to design having broken building lines and roof lines reducing the mass and scale accordingly. When the application is properly, robustly and fairly assessed against the content of LTP2 and the relevant supplementary guidance that provide the Council's own definition, Together with the guidance and definitions contained within MPF 4, this proposed development constitutes a genuine and legitimate brownfield development opportunity, and the decision to refuse permission should be overturned. The Scottish Government's definition has only one frame of reference for brownfield land, and that is if the land has been previously used and that it requires an intervention to be returned to its original state, then it has to be considered as brownfield opportunity. Clearly, an intervention would be required to return this site to its original state. It's considered that the proposal does constitute an appropriate redevelopment of what can be rightly be accepted as being a brownfield site. The Scottish Government's definition of a brownfield site is set out in MPF 4, which was adopted on the 13th of February 2023 and is an integral part of the development plan system. Since its adoption postdates the LDP2, it is considered to supersede previous guidance in the consideration or interpretation of a brownfield site. It is clear that this development should now be supported by the Council through the previous provisions of MPF 4, in particular the policy relating to rural homes policy 17. You've then within your pack got a list of the development plan policies on pages 269 to 297. So the main issues for the local review body to consider is, would the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LDP2 policy H3 and the guidance set out in the adopted LDP2 supplementary guidance in relation to the principle of the proposed development at this site? Would the proposal fail to comply with MPF 4 policies 9 and 17? In particular, would the proposal meet with the terms of point 2 of MPF 4 policy 17 as claimed by the applicant? Would the development extend beyond the previously developed area into greenfield land? Would this exceed the minimum required to remove dereliction, and if so, would that represent a departure from the development plan? Does the proposal represent a situation which would represent the reuse of brownfield land as defined in the glossary within MPF 4, where a return to a natural state has not or will not happen without intervention? It is accepted that the proposed development would fail to comply with the terms of MPF 2 policy H3 by virtue of the fact that the proposal would not represent the beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site as defined in the glossary of terms in LDP 2. Is it agreed that the existing site is not demonstrably intrusive visually or environmentally? Is it agreed that the condition of the site does not significantly detract from the amenity of the surrounding area? Would the proposed development not be suitably scaled, sited and designed to be in keeping with the character of the area? How much weight would members wish to attach to the local development body decision taken in relation to planning permission 221165 FUL at West Galdenock Farm? If it is not considered that the proposal does not accord with the terms of the development plan and there is a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development plan, if so, on what grounds would such a decision be made, and what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? If members are minded to reverse the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to attach, if any? If members are minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required, and which additional policies, if any, would be referenced? Having outlined the documents in your papers, it's now up to the LRB to determine whether it has sufficient information to consider this review. It is confirmed that no representatives from any third parties will be heard today. So like the previous item, the options that you have available are to decide that you have sufficient information to determine the review today, request further information in the form of written representations. Local review body will be required to state precisely the information it's seeking and who should provide it. Resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who will be invited to speak and on what matters. Resolve to hold a site visit, accompanied or unaccompanied, and this can be in junction with any of the above, but not allow for a decision to be made today. And if the local review body resolves that it has sufficient information and that no further procedure is required, then the local review body has the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary the determination. The decision notice will include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case be reviewed. You still have your planning advisor present and has not had any involvement with the case prior to the submission of the notice of review, and he was not the case officer or appointed officer. He is here to provide independent advice as needed on matters of planning policy or law or process to the local review body. and the solicitor is also present here today and will act independently if you require any specific advice on matters of law. I'll ask the Chair now to take you through to the debate. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Tracy. Robert, I'll turn to yourself for the photos. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. As previously, the PowerPoint presentation you'll see replicates the pictures that appear in the papers on, let me just check, pages 301 to 304. Before I start, I think it's fair to point out that the applicant's agent has also submitted pictures as well on pages 237 to 259, just in the interest of balance. So I haven't been to this site. These photos have been provided by the case officer and the appointed officer, and the captions as well. Site location plan is on page 227 of your papers as a comparison. So the first slide is showing, it's an aerial view. It shows the application site highlighted in red next to 2 public roads. The second one is a view of the U102W public road, which is looking in an easterly direction. So that's the side road from the A-class road, and then you're looking in the opposite direction here. So this is the U102W public road looking west. So that's the road from Sandhead. This is also a view from the U102W public road. It's looking north towards the site. You can see it there, the former agricultural building. And this is a view from within the site looking south towards the U102W public road and beyond. So a mirror of the previous one. This is a view of the agricultural shed on the site. This is looking to the northeast. And then you've got an aerial view here of the site confirming the existing cartilage. This is an aerial view of the site with the proposed development overlaid, which confirms the extent of the proposed development out with the current cartilage as greenfield land. This also highlights discrepancies in the plotting of the existing building and concrete apron.
Thanks very much for that, Robert. Members, any points, questions in regards to the photographs first? We can always revisit these. And Robert's already outlined there's further photographs within the report. Yep, Councillor Waters, Keith.
Just that last picture. The unbroken red line then, that's the proposed development. I see the applicant actually says that the proposed development which comes out beyond the existing curtilage is all going to be underground. Is that what that photo is actually showing?
So I know that's within our papers. Could we get that back on the screen, please, just briefly, just for the
Yeah,
sake
the
of
last,
the tags?
yeah, that one. Yeah. So it's the dotted red line is what is there at the moment, and then the solid red line, which sticks out with the sort of to the right hand side, is that that's the proposed, I don't know what you call it, curtilage of the new building, which the applicant is saying will be all underground, the bit that is extended out.
My reading of this, my reading of this, Chair, this has been provided by the case officer. So you've got an aerial view of the site as per the previous image, and then you've got the kind of plans on top of that. There's the previous image. So that is saying that is the site confirming the cartilage of the existing building. So you can see the building. You can see the concrete apron, you can see the access track to it. That is the cartilage of it. So that's the land in association with the existing building. Moving to the next slide, you've got an overlay of the proposed development. Now, this appears, you've got a site plan on the same page as your location plan in your papers. So it's the one that appears on page 227 that I'm sure has been used to do this. So you can see there you've got an access, this is looking at 227, you've got the proposed dwelling house. Now, the overlay, the part that goes beyond the dotted red line, which indicates the cartilage of the existing building that's on the site, the solid red line is the application site in this case. It's a detailed planning application, so what you can see within that additional area, if you like, going beyond the dotted line, which has the solid red line boundary, is a septic tank towards the top and a herringbone soakaway system, which would all be below ground. You might have access to some kind of inspection chamber for the septic tank or just attempt it, so it's something of that nature. The other thing to notice is you do have part of the access kind of turning head within that site and part of the proposed dwelling house itself, which is shown as being beyond the curtilage and the associated land of the existing development, the existing building. But the applicant's agent's view is that all that is beyond the existing building curtilage is the septic tank and silkway, which is below ground. So they're obviously taking an existing view of what the curtilage of the existing building is compared with the case officer, because clearly you can see here, if you go by this version, you can see that part of the proposed dwelling house is out with the existing curtilage as they see it. So there's a dispute there.
You okay with that, Keith?
Yeah, thanks for that.
No, thank you. Thanks for that, Robert, too. Thank you very much for dropping that off. Any other members got any points in regards to the photographs in particular? If not, we'll move to notice of a review dated 15th August 24, submitted by EA Design Agents on behalf of Mr. W. Finlay, the applicant, and received the same day, which is pages 171 to 181. Members got any questions at that point? Remember, we can come back to these at any point. Any questions, comments, clarification? Any point through the debate, as you'll have seen from the first one. The second part to that is the report and handling, determined under delegated powers and related correspondence, which is page 185 to 198. Members looking online as well, nothing within the room. Observations of the appointed officer and the applicant's agent's notice of review, which is 201 to 203. No. So the comments on applicant's agents on observation appointed officer is 207 to 209. Plan application form submitted 8th of January this year. Associated plans and supporting information is 213 to 259. Let's see, we can come back to these at any point. Decision letter from the council dated the 2nd of July is page 268 to 266. Relevant extracts from the local development, the Dumfries and Galloway Council's local development plan 2 and the national plan framework 4 is 269 to 297 members. Right, members, that's us ready to make a decision. Have we got enough information in regards to making a decision today? Councillor Justy, Andrew.
Yeah, sorry, it's again, I don't have the paper, so I don't have the pages in front of me, but I'm referring to the delegated report, the officer's delegated report, and I'm on paragraph 4.11, which basically talks about the spillage of the proposal into Greenfield site. Could you show us that? Could you show us what's meant by that by showing us the pictures that's up there? Just so I've got that firmly in my mind of what spillage we have into the Greenfield, or what spillage we have into the Greenfield land actually is.
I think that's it. I think we just kind of covered that.
So is it out with that blue?
I think I'll let Robert cover this. Obviously, as an independent plan advisor, but I think what you said previously was the dotted red line is the original, as it stands, existing, I should say, not original, existing curtilage boundary, and the solid red line is the proposed, but I'll let Robert explain that.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, the information I've received in the presentation here, this montage of the aerial view of the site and the proposed development, this is the case officer's view as to, you can see the existing building in the aerial picture, you can see the concrete apron around it, you can see the access track from the public road. The red dotted line is the case officer's definition of the existing building and its curtilage being the associated land. So that's kind of seen as the planning unit, the building and its curtilage. What you've got superimposed here is a replication of what's on page 227 of your papers. It is a wee bit blurry, so it's, you know, and that happens because it's been overlaid for the purposes of comparison, but the solid red line defines the application site boundary. So what you're looking at here is you've got part of the proposed dwelling house towards the north of the site is out with that dotted red line, which the case officers identified as being the curtilage of the building that's there. You've also got a small part of the turning area, just to the south of that, which branches off the access. And the other thing is, along the northern edge of your screen, as you see it here, you've got a green line, which is a fill drainage system going to a septic tank and a herringbone soakaway system. And so that is underground, apart from maybe an inspection chamber or a port which allows you to empty the septic tank. So basically that isn't going to be noticeable development because it's below ground, but when you're looking at the proposed part of the house and the element of the turning area there, they're going to be visible, they'll be above ground, and that is the part that's going out with the dotted red line that the case officers identified as being the curtilage to the building at the moment.
Thanks, Robert. Is that clear, Andrew?
So so outside the dotted red line is what is referred to in paragraph 4.11, which refers to greenfield land and how we can't, how we wouldn't support the building on greenfield sites.
Yes, that
That's it.
clarifies it. All ties in accord. So I think it's reasonable when you look at 4.11 and you look at the picture that what's said at 4.11 tallies with what's shown in the slide here. So I think it's reasonable to say that that is the area extending beyond the previous developed area and its curtilage into greenfield agricultural land. So it's that part that's got the solid red line about it, but goes beyond the dotted red line, which is seen as the greenfield agricultural land.
Thanks for that, Robert. Thanks, Andrew. I mean, I did pick up the same point reading through in I think particular the supporting statement at the beginning, but I think Robert's already alluded to it. There's a dispute there in regards to whether that's factually correct or not, because the applicants for the review here has made it clear they feel it's only, I think as you've said, the septic tank and the soakaway. I think it looks, on the face of it, with information we've got there in front of us, it looks different, certainly. Members, so we're looking in regards to, have we got enough information to make a decision today? We can always go back. Councillor Howie, Ian?
Chair, I think as the opinions differ considerably from one another, I would struggle to make a decision today until I was confident on which of these was actually correct. And I think that is information that we would probably require on the basis to proceed. It's just my personal view.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Ian. I haven't got any issues with that whatsoever in regards to if we need further information. I do think we need it. It just means we have to reconvene at a different point in time. I've seen it many times. I've got an account with Register Scotland, and you overlap historical maps to new maps, and there's usually anywhere between half a metre and about 1.5 metres of difference between them. And to me, that resembles some kind of similar. I'm not saying the case officer might be absolutely accurate, but the applicant might be absolutely accurate too. But there is a dispute in regards to the relevance of the information, and ultimately it's part of our consideration today, because what's been said by the case officer, well, part of that is building it up with the brownfield site, and actually building on a greenfield, a greenland, so to speak. So members, we've got a motion or a proposal, certainly. We haven't got enough information. I'm happy enough to support that in regards to that, so we'd have to find that information, but if we can go beyond that to make sure that you didn't want a site visit, anything like that. I'll roll that one in or out now. Any members do would wish to have a site visit in regards to this to try and clarify that point as well or not? If I don't hear anything, I'll take that as a no. Not hearing anything. So members, haven't got any further proposals in regards to that other than that we've got a proposal to defer this until a different date until we get that information. Is that straightforward information to get, Robert, do you think?
I might defer to the legal advisor here, but I think you would need to issue a procedure notice to all the relevant parties and specify exactly what the information, the additional information is that you're looking for. I would say in relation to this particular matter, it does form part of the appointed officer's decision, where it says the development would extend beyond the previously developed area into greenfield land and would exceed the minimum required to remove dereliction. Now that is the clear view of the appointed officer making that decision. So as the local review body, you're entitled to arrive at a different view if you want, but clearly you've seen from the presentation that the basis upon which the case officer and the appointed officer have acted in relation to that. So I'm not sure if any additional information could be submitted, because you're looking at the case officer and the applicant's agent having different views on the same thing. I think it's maybe you just need to arrive at a view in relation to that matter, but it's entirely in your own gift.
So members, I'm here to preside and keep order, so I'm taking it from yourselves in regards to what you feel. Ian, I'll get you to come back in regards to the comments that Robert's made. You can say, you can put your own interpretation on that if you wish, and have a completely different opinion in regards to the picture that we've seen, or we can stop this particular item, get the information, request the information through a procedure notice, and reconvene at a different point in time. Ian, over to you.
Chair, it's just I'd be uncomfortable proceeding on the basis that it is disputed between the applicant and the case officer about what the footprint of the site is going to be. And I'm not sure, as Robert said, how difficult it would be to determine which is actually the correct one. But as I say, I believe we should have the correct one before we proceed.
Okay, thanks for that. You're absolutely clear in regards to that. I've no one's come across otherwise minded, so we'll take that as a request. And so it's very rare we go down this, so it's interesting as we see this. So, Laura?
Thank you, Chair. In a similar vein to the previous application where further information on details hadn't been requested because there were other grounds for refusal, while it's perfectly within your gift to ask for this further information, is that then an indication that that is the only issue for the local review body? If you're satisfied that it is all within the curtilage and no greenfield is being used, that you would then be believing that it's not demonstrably intrusive or the proposed development is suitably scaled, would you then be saying that that's the only point at issue before you're going to ask for that further information?
Yeah, I suppose I'll come back to you again, but what I'm picking up for Ian is he just feels more comfortable making a decision in regards to this case with accurate, what he feels to be accurate information. In particular, I don't think he's looking to form a view at this moment in time, but last thing I want to do is put words in his mouth. Ian?
No, you just put words in my mouth.
Okay.
No, you're quite right, mate. I share that view. Yeah.
Sorry, Ian, I spoke over you there. Apologies, say that again.
No, just very much as what you said, Chair. At this stage, it was just for the accuracy of the site, the footprint, whether and that would open up a debate within the group thereafter.
Excellent. I'll just make sure that Tracy as a clerk's captured that. Robert, you want to come in there first?
Thanks, Chair. I'm not quite sure what's been asked for at the moment. Are you looking for an adjudicator to go out, visit the site and basically report back with an opinion or what? Because it's either extending the development beyond the previously developed into greenfield land or not, and that's going to be an opinion from a party other than the appointed officer or the applicant's agent. I'm just wondering, are you wanting to appoint an independent assessor to go out and take a view on that or not? Or how are you going to answer the question, if you like, from the extra information? So in other words, what's the extra information you're needing here?
So my experience would be if I wanted something really accurate in regards to that, you get some kind of topographical site survey done. But what Robert's indicating is that should be independently done. But I don't know if that's... So I mean, I would rather leave that to your professional, these are professional people who would deal with this on a daily and weekly basis to undertake that piece of work and bring back. And I think all what he's asking for really is that the information comes back is accurate, so that potential dispute, there's a professional opinion that says actually this is either correct or it isn't. So it's just factually correct information. And if you feel that justifies some kind of site survey, topographical or otherwise, or just that we've got accurate information coming back, that's what Ian's asked for, I'm sure it is.
So it's a kind of independent professional opinion of whether that part of the site is considered to be greenfield or not?
I think it is. I think it's the extent of the site boundaries. I mean, is it a slight overlap thing, but it's been picked up wrong? That's his main thoughts coming forward. Is it accurate at that level of? Is it actually a Google map that's slightly out of sync, or is it an actual live survey through using the most up-to-date technology, which would pinpoint that? Because normally the applicant would have that level of survey done, but a planner wouldn't have gone in, I don't think, would undertake that. But ultimately, they would overlap, look at Google and such like. That's where the ambiguity is for me, but it's Ian that's brought this point up, Robert. Do you think you've captured that?
Thanks, Jim. And the reason I'm asking is obviously I act as independent planning advisor for the local review body. I've not been involved in this case in terms of its determination beyond preparing documents, etc. today. But I'm thinking I could actually go out and probably visit the site and arrive at an opinion on that and then report back to the local review body. It might be the quickest and easiest way to do that, but I'm just not sure if that's what you're looking for.
I'm more than comfortable with that, so long as we feel the information is accurate, Robert, and obviously we're very highly likely will, because you're a professional advisor. But Ian, come to you as well. Councillor Justice giving us a thumbs up too. Ian?
Yeah, more than satisfied with Robert carrying that out.
Yeah, that's okay with that. And so, Laura?
Well, I'm just looking at the regulations and wondering under what regulation we're doing that. There certainly is, under Regulation 16, the ability for the local review body as a whole to go out and have a site inspection. So I'm just wondering if perhaps, going back to your earlier suggestion of having a site inspection, that it's not just Robert that goes out, but it's others as well that go out.
Okay, I'll just clarify in regards to what we can delegate as a review body. Do we have to, it can be accompanied and unaccompanied, I think is what was being expressed earlier as well, or can we actually delegate that level of authority for that to be undertaken on our behalf, or can we ask or instruct, so to speak, the applicant or the case officer to come back and say, listen, give us that information?
Chair, looking at the regulations, you've got Regulation 15, which is written submissions, which we've used in other local review bodies, where we specifically go out and ask for further written information, where it would be the applicant themselves sourcing that information and providing it to us, or you've got the ability in Regulation 16 as a local review body to go out and carry out a site inspection. I'm not quite clear that Robert would be sufficiently covered in the regulations, albeit pragmatic what he's suggesting, sufficiently covered in the regulations to carry that out.
No, I think it's quite clear, Laura. So, Ian, it is for, again, I'll take certainly the guidance from the committee, but it's either to ask, I think, the applicant to provide that information, or we all go as a local review body collectively. Ian?
Yeah, I'm happy either way, Chair, to be perfectly honest, as long as we can determine which of these drawings is accurate.
I think then if we're comfortable, I might make Councillor Juicy, I'll let you in first, Andrew.
Chair, I was just going to propose that we have a site visit to cover the discussed issues.
Okay, thanks so much for that. Fine with that, okay, we'll go with that then. Right, Tracy, if you can outline the decision, just to defer that in the short term to Laura, sorry.
Sorry, Chair, apologies if it appears I'm coming in piecemeal here, but just so that we're quite clear, would you wish in the site inspection to say in advance what it is that you'd like to be looking at, and also perhaps even ask for further information to assist you when you're going out into your site inspection, so that you're quite clear? I know we've done that in past site inspections, said what it is you particularly want to be looking at, and even asked for people to mark things out on the land to assist you with it.
That'd be absolutely perfect as far as I'm concerned. If you could out say so, and I think in real terms what we want to see is the existing proposals outlined in with pins, marks, whatever it may be, but then the proposal being outlined as well. Then we're quite clear, and that's as would be built, so as existing and that as potentially being constructed. If that's okay, is that? Yep. Getting nods.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, thanks very much. Councillor Justy.
Chair, is it possible to have the agent available at that site visit to cover this as well, or on their behalf?
My concern, Chair, is that while we're asking for the ability to go out and do a site inspection, it's not really an opportunity for the applicant or their agent to give further representations. It would have to be quite clear that if they're there, they're just to assist in those specific points and not to be an opportunity to provide further new representations. We'd have to be quite careful on that. I think there have been other site visits where agents have been there, but it's had to be quite careful in how it's conducted.
I'm sorry, I'll let Robert answer that, but I think we had one in Moffat. I'm sure it was in LRB. We did, and so it was clearly it outlined where the site was, the existing, the boundaries, and I think Laura's absolutely right there, Andrew, in regards to it is about, but who's the best person to actually describe this? Is I would thought it would be the agent, but like Laura's saying, for the sake of compliance, we'd have to make sure we didn't drift into being lobbied, and I think that's the point that's being made, just about the accuracy of the existing and what would be the proposed build-out. If they're comfortable enough with that, can we leave it with the professional advisors and this solicitor, as Laura, just to deal with that, and we'll turn up as a committee to that. Robert?
I was just going to say, Chair, that there's guidance in the clerk's note in relation to site inspections.
Sorry, Tracy, go on.
Sorry, Chair, thanks. Yeah, I'll just read out the guidance that we've got here on site inspections just for information for members. So the review body may at any time determine that a site inspection is necessary. A site inspection may be unaccompanied or accompanied by the applicant and any other interested parties. The applicant and any interested party will be notified of any proposed accompanied site inspection. However, the review body is not required to defer an inspection if any persons to whom notice was given is not present at the appointed time. The review body will be accompanied on the site inspections by the clerk. The planning advisor may also attend if requested by the review body. The intention to make an unaccompanied site inspection will be intimated to the applicant. The purpose of the site inspection will be to inspect the site and its surroundings. No discussion on the merits of the review will take place. The review shall not determine at a site visit, but shall continue to a future reconvened meeting of the review body for determination. All those members considering the review at the reconvened meeting of the review body must attend the site visit. In deciding whether to proceed to a site inspection, you need to consider how well are the issues understood from the description of the site and the plans. How well do members of the LRB know the area already? Are the issues requiring clarification concerning with visual assessments of the actual physical arrangements or the nature of the surroundings? Is the nature of the use of the property now and as proposed well enough understood without direct experience? Are there environmental issues such as noise, general amenity or overshadowing that require to be assessed first hand? I hope that helps.
It does. It does. So we've agreed for the site visit. Accompanied, I think that is what we're saying. The appropriate person, Robert, will deal with that. Robert?
Thanks, Chair. So is it going to be accompanied or unaccompanied? That was really, well, that was one of two questions I had. And the other thing was, you were asking for the application site boundary, as shown in the solid red line in the slide presentation, to be pegged out by the applicant's agent in advance of the site visit.
And I think so. My definition of accompanied would be if the applicant or the applicant's agent was there. In particular, I think we need somebody who's with the proper qualification with the outline. So if we've got questions, I think Andrew said that we've got questions in regards to what's that point, what does this mean, we can get them answered. So I think that would justify an accompanied site visit, but it is only by the appropriate people. We'd leave that, I think, would that be delegated obviously to yourselves as professional advisors?
And the point of the site visit is obviously to enable you to form a view on whether or not that part of the site is greenfield or not, or the extent of the site which you can consider to be greenfield, which is a judgment call at the end of the day. Okay.
No, that's exactly it. Councillor Justy, Andrew?
Yeah, within Tracy's speech there, she mentioned that it's for the committee to decide who would like there. Is it worth us bringing the clerk as a governance officer to keep us right and to make sure that we're... Because I know the agent through work like he's put on to me before, he can be quite vocal. Is it worth us having someone there as a mediator to make sure that we don't stray off topic?
You can get reassurance, Andrew, we won't stray off topic, but I think to be absolutely clear, we'll ask as a committee that we have the appropriate level of support there, plan advisor, whether that's the clerk and solicitor. We can let them determine that themselves, and if they want to come, they can make that decision. But I think when it comes to forceful comments, we can adjust ourselves accordingly as members of this particular committee. So I think what we've agreed in real terms is that we're going to adjourn this or defer this to have a site visit and reconsider a future meeting, which we haven't got the date for as of yet. Robert, you want to come in?
Just wondering, so that's an accompanied site visit then?
Yep, please, yep, as outlined, but we'll leave the finite detail to yourselves as professional people. But Tracy, do you just want to confirm that, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So members have agreed to defer consideration of this item today to allow for an accompanied site visit to be arranged with the appropriate officers in attendance, and the outcome of the site visit is to try and define whether there was any greenfield land on the development, and we're also requesting that the applicant mark out the area as existing and as proposed prior to the site visit.
100% getting nods. Thanks so much for that. Members, let's see, it's 12:24. Need at least a 5-minute break. Are members comfortable with a 5-minute break, or do you want a break for lunch at the moment? I'll open it up. I'm getting 5 minutes in the room. Members are happy with that, we'll do that. 5 minutes, let's just get a chance to get our papers into order again, and we'll be moving on to item number 6, I think it is. Thank you. Thanks very much, Sandy. Abby. So members, that's us back online again. Thanks so much for that short break. And item number 6, and Tracy's just got to outline the procedure. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Moving on to item 6 is Moorshard Quarry site, Gatehouse of Fleet, refusal of planning permission for siting of 3 holiday accommodation units with associated decking and parking areas, siting of access road, installation of sewage treatment plant and soakaway and associated landscaping, 232704 FUL. So again, in your pack, you've got your notice of review, which is on pages 311 to 338. You've got the report on handling and related correspondence from pages 341 to 371. Observations of the appointed officer and the applicant's agent's notice of review and further comments from representative, pages 375 to 377. Then got your comments of the applicant's agent on observations of the appointed officer from pages 381 to 382. Planning application form, which was submitted on the 12th of December 2023. Plans and supported information is pages 385 to 481. Your decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated the 22nd of July 2024 is pages 487 to 490. Got a list of your relevant extracts of the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2, National Planning Framework 4 on pages 493 to 521. And finally, you've got your photos of the application site, which are on pages 525 to 528. So the grounds for refusal are on page 488 of your pack, which is, as a result of the siting of the proposed development, it would fail to complement the natural environment and would have a significant unacceptable landscape and visual impact within the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area and the Galloway Hill Regional Scenic Area, such that it would jeopardise the scenic landscape contrary to MPF 4 policies 4 and 30, Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2, policies OP1, OP2, ED9, NE1 and NE2, the associated supplementary guidance on design quality and placemaking and the planning guidance Fleet Valley National Scenic Area Management Strategy. The applicant has asked that the review be dealt with by means of a site visit to inspect the land to which the review relates, on the basis that it is necessary to enable an understanding of the context of the site within the landscape, particularly given the stated reason for refusal being unacceptable landscape and visual impact, and you can find that on page 314. So the grounds stated in the notice of review and further comments of the applicant's agent on observations of the appointed officer, pages 317 to 338 and 381 to 382, and in summary as 1, the proposal complements the natural environment and would not have a significant unacceptable landscape and visual impact within the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area and the Galloway Hills Regional Scenic Area. Scenic landscape would not be jeopardised. The development would not be contrary to MPF 4 policies 4 and 30 or Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 policies OP1, OP2, ED9, NE1 and NE2 or associated supplementary guidance on design quality and placemaking or planning guidance Fleet Valley National Scenic Area Management Strategy. 2. The proposal comprises an appropriate form of rural diversification and will accord with MPF 4 policies 29 and 30 and Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan policies ED9, ED10 and OP1. The proposal creates an environmentally sustainable development and complies with MPF 4 policy 1, tackling the climate and nature crisis, 2, limit climate mitigations and adaptation, and 19, heating and cooling, and LDP 2 policies OP1, development considerations, OP2, design quality and placemaking, and IN 8, surface water drainage and sustainable drainage systems, SUDS, as well as LDP 2, supplementary guidance document, sustainability, reducing carbon emissions in buildings. There is no other material considerations which indicate that the appeal should not be allowed. The proposed development should be granted planning permission. The proposal is a smaller and more sensitively designed development proposal than previously submitted, and the proposal is materially different. The design and the layout of the units and the development as a whole is considered to have been altered by an extent which materially changes the impact within the landscape as compared to the previous larger proposal. The subject of this local review is the specific development proposal before the local review body. It is not and must not be some wholly theoretic future proposal. The appointed officer's comments furthermore an approval for 3 holiday units on this site would also leave the site more susceptible to potential future expansion is not an appropriate consideration, as it is only the proposal before the authority that may be assessed and not theoretic potential events at some undefined time in the future. This is the fundamental principle. It is not agreed that the proposal amounts to sporadic development. The proposal is carefully sited near to a former quarry area in a slight depression and in a location which simply is not visible from the A75. Photomontages have been provided. Furthermore, there are several rural diversification and tourism developments in the local area. This proposal is not sporadic, it is small scale and sensitively sited. The appointed officer makes reference to perceived landscape impact in what the officer relates to as flat open landscape, but does not acknowledge or make comment upon the accurate photomontages prepared by the applicant's architect from exactly those viewpoints which were identified by the planning authority itself within the processing of the previous application. The appointed officer does not acknowledge the detailed siting and layout of the proposal in a slight dip by the former quarry. The appointed officer wishes to stress the perceived impact upon the landscape, but does not identify any actual negative or materially detrimental impact, such as a particular viewpoint or defined landscape impact. The statement is much more general and without explanation or example. It is noted that 4 glamping pods of the same height were approved by the local review body on an elevated site approximately 800 metres to the northwest of the proposed site in June 2023, post-adoption of MPF 4, and court now reference to 0313 FUL. The development is not yet constructed, but the site is within the regional scenic area and is significantly more visible from within the national scenic area due to its elevated position than the proposed site. Both the officer's report and the observations of the appointed officer omit to take this into account, and other relevant LRB decisions within the local area. The appointed officer acknowledges that this is a farm diversification proposal and that rural diversification is to be supported and encouraged under MPF 4, but then states that due to the nature of the proposal, policies relating to tourism take precedence. There is no reasoning or justification given for this statement, and MPF 4 within Annex A, how to use this document, specifically states that MPF 4 should be read as a whole. Where several policies are relevant, it is not unusually appropriate to pick and choose which are more relevant than others, or to view one policy in isolation from another. Rural diversification policy and tourism policy are both relevant to this proposal, but at a local and national policy level. The proposal recognises that historically in the local area there has been development of some large sites which are perhaps not necessarily sensitive to the NSA or the RSA, such as large caravan parks. This is the very reason why such a carefully designed and sensitive proposal has been put forward by the applicant for a very small rural diversification and tourism development. Historic decisions, which would perhaps not be supported in a modern day planning scenario, should not prevent the appeal case before the LRB being assessed on its own merits. The appointed officer states that there is a prevalence of tourism accommodation developments along the coastline locally. In fact, there are very similar sized 2 to 4 person self-catering huts in the local area which offer stays shorter than 1 week. The proposed development will specifically provide shorter stays for 2 to 4 guests. Gatehouse hosts some fantastic annual events, 2 being cycling events, the Gralloch and the Raiders Gravel. The applicant observes that participants have to stay towards Castle Douglas and Dalbeattie and beyond, as there are so few short stay accommodation options of 1 to 3 nights. It's also noted that the several snug units on the hillside to the north of the site at Lagan do not have catering facilities. Rather, guests eat in one site restaurant or travel further afield. It's also noted that the campsites at Newton Farm and Moss Yard are seasonal. The caravans at Cardiness to the north-east are privately owned. There is a need for a small-scale self-catered accommodation for short-term stays. This is not a prevalence of these. You've then got a list of your development plan policies on pages 493 to 521. So the main issues for the local review body to consider are noting the site visit request of the applicant. Are members persuaded that there is sufficient compelling set of reasons to undertake such a site visit in this case? In this regard, it is recognised that this process would need to be subject to a formal procedure notice to all relevant parties setting out the site visit arrangements at a future date. By reason of siting, would the proposal development fail to complement the natural environment as a result of its siting? Would the proposed development have a significant unacceptable landscape and visual impact within the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area and the Galloway Hills Regional Scenic Area, such that the scenic landscape would be jeopardised? On that basis, would the proposal fail to accord with the terms of LTP2 policies OP1, OP2, ED9, NE1 and NE2 and the relevant supplementary guidance? Does the proposal accord with the terms of MPF4 policies 4, 7, 14 and 30 insofar as the landscape and visual impact arising from the proposal by reason of the proposed siting is concerned? How much weight should members of the local review body take in decision taken in relation to the planning permission of 220313 FUL at court now? How much weight would members wish to attach to the decision taken in relation to planning permission 220368 FUL at the same location as this proposal? If members conclude that the proposal is contrary to the terms of the development plan, are there any other material considerations which would justify a decision which would represent a departure from the terms of the development plan, and if so, on what grounds would such a decision be made? If members are minded to not uphold the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? If members are intended to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision and make explicit the reference to MPF4 in the decision notice, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required? So, having outlined the documents within your papers, it now falls to the local review body to determine whether it has sufficient information to consider this review, and it's confirmed that no representations from any parties will be heard today. As per the previous two items, the options available are to decide that you have sufficient information before you to determine the review today, request further information in the form of written representation, and the local review body will be required to state precisely the information it's seeking and who should provide it, resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who's invited and on what matters, resolve to hold a site visit, accompanied or unaccompanied, which can be done in conjunction with any of the above, but would not allow a decision to be made today. If the local review body resolves that it has sufficient information and that no further procedure is required, then the local review body has the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. Decision notice will include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. You still have a planning advisor present here on this case, which has confirmed that they don't have any involvement in the case prior to the submission of the notice of review. They were not the case officer or their appointed officer. He's here to provide independent advice as required on matters of planning policy, law or process for the local review body. And the solicitor is still present here today. She will act independently if the local review body require any specific advice on matters of law. So I'll now ask the chair to lead the debate and in the first instance take you through the papers to see if you have sufficient information. Thank you.
I suppose just a quick question before I proceed, Tracy. We've got an exempt document outlined or coloured pink. Have you got any guidance in regards to what should happen if we look to discuss those matters?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, so in your papers you've got information that was provided by the applicant's agent in support of this application that they have requested be made exempt. So if members do wish to discuss anything contained within that, then my advice would be to exclude the public and go into private session and then reconvene back in the public meeting. But that's only if you wish to discuss any of the specific details that are contained within that exempt pack that you received separate.
Thanks so much for that, Tracy. So we'll take that as read, so to speak, and we'll make a resolution to exclude the public if that's required, if we look to go into information out in our coloured information that's been supplied. So Robert, over to yourself in regards to the photographs, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Again, as with the previous cases, what you're about to see in the PowerPoint presentation replicates the photos provided in your papers at pages 525 to 528 in this case. They've been provided by the case officer. I haven't been out in site myself. In the interest of balance, there are also photographs that have been submitted on behalf of the applicant, and they're at pages 317, 319, 320 and pages 406 to 415 of your papers. So please don't just take these pictures into account when arriving at a determination. So the first slide I've got from the case officer is a view of the application site behind the stone dike there. And this is looking broadly in a kind of easterly, southeasterly direction towards the islands of Fleet. The second view is looking southwest, showing the site of the new access road that's part of the proposal. The application site is to the left behind the stone dike that you can see there. This is a view of the site of the proposed access road looking west. And this is a view looking west showing the site of the former quarry in the foreground, and that's located to the south of the application site. This is a view of the former quarry site looking in the opposite direction, so this is looking east. And this is a view of the application site itself looking southeast. This is a view looking south, showing the application site with Moss Yard in the kind of middle distance. And this is a view looking north from the access road. So that's looking towards Lagan. You can see the development there. There's various buildings, and the kind of snug accommodation units are at the slightly higher level in that picture. You'll see the buildings in the foreground are mainly houses. And there's also Gigi's Yard function suite there as well.
Thanks very much, Robert. Members will open up if anyone's got any particular points in regards to the photographs. A member can always come back to them, and Robert's asked you to take consideration of what's been supplied as well, I think, which I'm sure we will have done. Members, I think first point, if we've got no particular questions or comments in regards to that. Notice of review dated 21st August 24, submitted by Eric Plannan. Agents on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Mrs. M and A, Conkey applicants, and received on the same day, pages 311 to 338. I think it's page 314 in there, members. We'll come back to this point, but I think we're being asked specific, that's been mentioned already by Tracy, for a site visit. Report and handling determined under delegated powers and related correspondence 341 to 371. So observations of appointed officers of on the applicant's agent, notice of review and further comments from representatives, pages 375 to 377. Comments from the applicant's agent on observations of the appointed officers, pages 381 to 382. Plan application form submitted the 12th of December last year, associated plans and supporting information 385 to 481. No. Decision letter from the council, pages 487 to 490. No, seems quite content in the relevant extracts from the Free Scarlet Council's LDP2 and the NPF 493 to 521 members. So the first question we'll have is, have we got enough information to make a determination today? We've been requested for a site visit. It's, I suppose, let's look at the grounds for the refusal. It would fail to complement the natural environment, and would have a significant and acceptable landscape and visual impact within the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area. So that particular ground, I think, it is about a visual impact. We've been asked for a site visit, I think, probably to look at the specifics in regards to what impact that would have. I think we've just agreed to have one more recently, but Councillor Howie's coming in. Ian?
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm quite happy to accede to the request of the applicant for a site visit, and if it can be managed at the same time that we're heading west anyway, it would make sense to try and combine them if at all possible.
I would agree with that entirely. So it would, taking the advice we've had previously, if we decide to do that, that'll be a procedural notice. We want to know exactly what it is we're looking for, whether it's accompanied or unaccompanied members. So I think in regards to this, I'd want to be accompanied by at least a professional advisor. I don't know if that comes into it. I wouldn't want to just turn up myself there. I need to, but if we're turning up, and for me it would be with obviously that area of beauty and the potential impact. It's identified as a national scenic area, and the potential impact that this construction works would have on that area. That'd be my members accompanied or unaccompanied would be the first thing if we're having a site visit. Anybody got a particular view in regards to that? That'll be a part of our procedural notice. Councillor Howie?
Chair, I'm always glad to have professional advice at hand.
Yep. And would you expect the applicant or agent, anything like that, to be there, or just our own advisors?
Open to that, Chair, either way.
Okay, thank you. Look for Keith, Councillor Walters, were you coming in there?
No, I would be tempted to say to have the applicant's agent there just to clearly identify where the site is.
Yep, we're fine with that, yep.
Yeah.
Interests of balance, yep, more than happy with that. So we're probably picking up, I think everybody's probably picking this up. So is the grounds, I think, it's to understand, get a better understanding on site in regards to the potential visual impact that would have in particular. And the second, it would be accompanied that as a procedural notice. Is that enough for everybody to capture? And we obviously would like to tie that up in the same day as the other one if possible. Robert?
Thanks, Chair. Just a question, point of clarification. Obviously, this is a visual issue, and you've read all the papers. I'm conscious that there's been various information provided today from various viewpoints. You've seen you've just seen the photographs from the case officer. I'm conscious that the applicant's agent has also submitted information within their submission, visual information too. And as well as looking at this from the site, I think it's important that as a local review body, you look at it from the surrounding area so you can kind of assess the impact on the local review body, the regional scenic area, and also the national scenic area. Are you wanting to look at this from a range of specific viewpoints in that case, or is it just a case of going to the site? I think it should be more widespread, if you like, so looking at viewpoints as well as it from the application site, but that's entirely in your gift, Chair.
No, thanks so much for that advice, Robert. I would take that advice on board personally. I think, okay, to see the site right at its location, as I suppose the pictures we've seen for the case officer, but see it in its wider context, that would be important too. So viewpoints and vantage points, I like to see, because obviously there's a quarry there, the potential benefits we'll see from that being reinstated or otherwise is actually on site. But if members are okay, we'll ask Robert to not only just on site, but some vantage points as well, some different viewpoints, which allows us to take in the whole regional scenic area. Yep, excellent. No got MDX saying it otherwise. Okay, we'll capture that as a decision then. Thank you. Just let Tracy outline that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So members have deferred consideration of this review until a site visit is arranged, accompanied site visit is arranged with relevant officers on hand, and that's to be with a range of viewpoints, and this is to assess the visual impact on the natural environment, including the regional scenic area and the national scenic area.
And hopefully we'll get that in the same day as an assurance. Take that, we'll put that as a directive, ideally. Excellent, members. Thanks so much. Number 7, I think it is. Just give us a second to get my papers together. Excellent, thanks very much, members. So I'll just ask Tracy to outline item number 7. Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Chair. So item number 7, Rose Cottage, 17 School Bray, Hawkever, refusal of planning permission for change of use of detached domestic annex to dwelling house, reference 240181 FUL. So in your papers, you've got your notice of review, which is pages 535 to 545. Got your report on handling and related correspondence, pages 549 to 566. Observations of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review, and further comments from the consultee, which is the roads planning team leader, pages 569 to 574. You've then got comments of the applicant's agent on observations of the appointed officer, and further comments from the consultee, roads team planning leader, pages 577 to 581. planning application form dated the 1st of February 2024 and associated plans and supporting information, pages 585 to 599. Decision letter from Drifeasy Galloway Council dated the 12th of August 2024 on pages 603 to 606. Then you've got relevant extracts of the Drifeasy Galloway Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Framework 4, pages 609 to 631, followed by the photos of the application site and locality on pages 635 to 640. So the grounds for refusal are detailed in your papers on pages 604 to 605, and those are: 1. The proposal is contrary to the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2, policies H2, housing in villages, OP1A, general amenity, OP2, design, quality and placemaking, H8, alteration and extensions to dwellings and the related supplementary guidance, and National Planning Framework 4, policy 14, design in place, and that the change of use of an ancillary residential annex, which was approved and conditioned only on the basis of it remaining as part of the same single planning unit as Rose Cottage, to a separate freestanding dwelling house would result in a backland development which would not accord with or enhance the character of the village, and which would result in an unacceptable poor level of amenity of the occupants of both properties. And 2, it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that both Rose Cottage and the proposed new separate dwelling house could be appropriately serviced in terms of provision of the required off-street car parking and turning facilities or safe vehicular access, either by way of separate individual accesses or a shared access where two cars can safely pass each other. The applicant has asked that the review be dealt with by means of a site visit to inspect the land to which the review relates, on the basis stated within the submission that the site visit will show the parking arrangements on site, the design quality which fits well within the surrounding environment, and would also show the proposal would not result in further backyard development, and the proposal would provide a good level of amenity for both properties. An unaccompanied site visit would not be appropriate, as the applicant would appreciate prior notice of a site visit so as not to be alarmed by people arriving unexpectedly at their property, and this is outlined on page 538. So the grounds stated in the notice of review and further comments of the applicant's agent on observations of the appointed officer and further comments from the consultee council's roads planning team leader for pages 541 to 542 and page 577, and those are, in summary, that the proposal for Rose Cottage and the annex to be made separate dwellings offers a good level of amenity for the occupants of each dwelling, and this has carefully been considered when the annex was designed and built. Ample garden space is provided. Fencing and planting has been strategically and sympathetically placed for privacy between the proposed dwellings. Revised car parking proposals are set out, which is provided in additional information. The parking at Rose Cottage and the annex will be entirely separate. Off-street car parking for Rose Cottage can be created separately. Applicant disagrees that this is backland development. It is an existing structure that plays a role in addressing housing shortages in urban areas, while also raising concerns about overdeveloped loss of green spaces and the potential disruption of local communities' MPF. May further impact the policies related to backyard development, as it focuses on creating sustainable, inclusive and well-designed places that this small proposal would definitely deliver. You then have a list of the local development policies on pages 609 to 631. So the main issues for the local review body to consider are: the applicant's agent has submitted late information which was not in front of the appointed officer when the decision was taken on the 12th of August 2024. This information comprising the car parking plans as they appear at pages 543, 544 and 545 of the papers, and further amended version and commentary at pages 579 and 581 of the papers. Section 43 of the Town and Country Plan in Scotland Act 1997, as amended, provides that in a review under section 43A8 and party to the proceedings is not to raise any new matters which was not before the appointed officer at the time of the determination of the review was made, unless that party can demonstrate A, that the matter could not have been raised before that time, or B, that it's not being raised before the time was a consequence of exceptional circumstances. On that basis, are members satisfied that on the basis that the late information should not be taken into account? If members are minded not to take this information into account, then members should discard the related documentation that appears in papers at pages 543, 544, 545, 569, 570, 577, 579 and 581, insofar as it relates to this late information which was submitted. Noting the site visit request from the applicant, are members persuaded that there is a sufficient compelling set of reasons to undertake such a visit in this case? In this regard, it is recognised that this process would need to be the subject of a formal procedural notice to all relevant parties, setting out the site visit arrangements at a future date. Would the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LDP2, policies H2, housing in villages, OP1, Part A, general amenity, H9, design quality and placemaking and related supplementary guidance? Would the proposal fail to accord with MPF 4, policy 14, design and place? Specifically, would the proposal change the use of this residential annex to form a separate dwelling house, resulting in backland development? If so, would this fail to accord with or enhance the character of the village? Would the result be an unacceptable poor level of amenity for the future occupants of both properties? Is it agreed that it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that both Rose Cottage and the proposed new separate dwelling house cannot be appropriately serviced in terms of car parking or safe vehicular access? It is not considered that the proposal If it is not considered that the proposal does not accord with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development plan? If so, on what grounds would such a decision be made, and what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? If members are minded to reverse the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? And if members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decisions would be required, and what additional policies, if any, would be referenced? So, having outlined the documents within your papers, it now falls to the local review body to determine whether it has sufficient information to consider the review. It's confirmed no representations will be heard from any parties today, and as per the previous items, your options are to decide you have sufficient information before you to enable you to determine the review today, request further information in the form of written submissions, written representations. The local review body will be required to state precisely the information it's seeking and who should provide it. Resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who will be invited to speak and on what matters. Resolve to hold a site visit, accompanied or unaccompanied, which can be done in conjunction with any of the above and would not allow a decision to be made today. And if the local review body resolves that it has sufficient information that no further procedure is required, then you have the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination, and the decision notice will include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. Your planning advisor is present, and it's confirmed that they have not had any involvement in the case prior to the submission of the notice of review. They were not the case officer or the appointed officer for the application, and he is here purely to provide independent advice as required on matters of planning policy, law or process to the local review body. And the solicitor is also still present here today, and she will act independently if the local review body requires specific advice on matters of law. So I'll now ask the Chair to take you through the debate and decide whether you have sufficient information in front of you today. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tracy, for that. Members, I'll just give you a chance just in case there's any points, and I'll hand over to Robert. Robert, for the photos, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Again, this is a PowerPoint presentation. The captions and the pictures were provided by the case officer and the appointed officer. I haven't visited the site. In the interest of balance, you have photographs within the submission elsewhere at pages 563, 564 and 565. So the first picture is an aerial photograph of the site with Rose Cottage, noting the opposite hatching on the public road markings in School Bray. It has a grass verge along the frontage in this picture, which has now been removed and replaced with hardcore, and we'll see that in the other pictures. The annex detached, the detached annex rather, is located in the garden at the rear, so that's on the left-hand side. So Rose Cottage is on the right-hand side, opposite the hatching you can see there. So that's the arrangement between the two properties. Tynebruch lies to the top of the photograph, so just above where you can see that kind of green rectangle. It's a kind of T-shaped building set back from the road, and it has an outbuilding to the front. Craig's Cottage and Yarala, if that's correct pronunciation, lie to the bottom of the photograph as you look at this. So the second image is from Google Street View. It's April 2021, showing the grass verge in front of Rose Cottage and the access of the C1S, School Brae, and the tree on the right hand side should be noted too, because that's now been removed. So this is a similar picture from October 2024. It shows Rose Cottage. It shows the grass verge now replaced with hardcore material, and it also shows the crosshatch road markings on the C1S public road, which were in the aerial photograph previously. This is a view showing the access to the side of Rose Cottage, again from October 2024. The annex is located behind the vehicle, the car you can see there. So you can see the gable end of that building. This is a view of the frontage of Rose Cottage, October 2024, looking broadly south. And this is in the opposite direction along the frontage of Rose Cottage. You can see the hardcore verge there and also the access route beyond the edge of that building. You've got the existing boundary there to the rear of Rose Cottage along the driveway leading towards the annex, which is in the background. You can just see the gable end there beyond that birch tree. And this is a view showing the rear of Rose Cottage along the driveway looking towards the main road. This again is from the rear of Rose Cottage. You can see Tynebruch, separate property in the centre there with that kind of timber cladding to the upper gable, and then you've got the annex to it just to the right hand side there. Rose Cottage here is the property with the dormers on the extreme right of this picture, and the residential annex, which is the subject of this application, is on the left hand side just next to that patio. This is a better view showing the annex front elevation as it exists at the moment. And then you've got another view of the side of the annex and the existing shed in the darker brown, which is next to the driveway. So that is the one you could see from the other picture when you look towards the annex. So the annex on the left there, timber clad extension which is integral to it, and then you've got the separate existing shed as well. And this is a side elevation of the annex, so this is the kind of far end of the site, if you like, next to the field beyond that hedge that you can see there.
Thanks very much for that, Robert. Give members a chance to digest and ask if there's any comments, questions, anything in the photos. If not, members for the first couple haven't actually got the page numbers in front of us, unfortunately. So the notice of review, 3rd of September 24. If any members have got any particular points in regards to that, we've been asked for a site visit, as I would have outlined was the case, wasn't it? Yep. Report and handling, determined on a delegated powers and related correspondence is the second part. Members, give me a chance. So, 3 is observations of the appointed officer and the applicant's agent's notice of review. Further comments from consultee. The council's roads planning team leader, pages 569 to 574. Comments of the applicant's agent on observations of the appointed officer and further comments from consultee, which is council's roads planning team leader, pages 577 to 581. Check plan application form submitted 1st of Feb 24. Associated plans and supporting information is 585 to 599. Decision notice from the council, dated 12th August, 603 606. Relevant extracts from Duffy's and Galloway's LDP 2 and NPF 4, Scottish Government 609 to 631. And we've already seen the photos which are outlined in 635 to 640. Robert's been through them. Members, this is certainly a different case, so I suppose, Robert, I'll try and summarise. Just correct me if I'm wrong, and just start the debate. I hadn't noticed that Councillor Thompson's away. He's left that in the chat just for the record as well. He left about 12:30 time. So obviously the principal development's been established here, so it's beyond that time. So this is clearly a change of use is what has been applied for. I think the original constraints around about the road, off-street parking, road, turning points, so on and so forth. I wonder if you could have just, for the sake of the members, went through your thoughts in regards to that and the further information that's been forwarded to the committee. Robert.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you look at the planning history to this, it was granted permission as a residential annex, and there were reasons for that, which are in the report. And what they're proposing to do is basically change the use of that residential annex such that that building would become a freestanding dwelling house. So basically, you would be looking at 2 independent units that would meet the definition of a dwelling house and could be occupied by entirely independent parties. So that's what the application is for. In relation to the late information, when the notice of review came in, there was additional information, and that appears on pages 543, 544 and 545 of your papers. When the various consultees and the appointed officer were notified, that information was included there, because at that point in time you hadn't sat as an LRB to decide if you wanted to take that information into account or not. So basically you have comments on pages 569, 570 as well, responding to that additional information. In addition to that, you've got further information that was submitted by the applicant on pages 577, 579 and 581, which is also additional information. So this is all in relation to car parking and access, as I understand it. It's all information that wasn't in front of the appointed officer when the determination was made. It's been included, like I say, on the basis that I knew that you would have to consider whether or not you wanted to include this as part of your consideration or not. So essentially, you can either opt to consider some or all of that information or just discard all of it. And if you're going to discard all of the additional information that was submitted and everything that flows from it, then you can do that. And that's the stuff, like I say, you would just put a line through pages 543, 544, 545, 569, 570, 577, 579 and 581. And that would simply mean that you're not taking it into account. It does occur to me that, you know, clearly there's an ongoing issue here in relation to the matters that are subject of the new information. And normally I would suggest that if they wanted to explore that further, they could submit a new planning application. I don't honestly see a compelling reason why it's introduced today. The applicant's agent was obviously keen for it to be in front of members, but it seems to be an ongoing issue, because when you look at what's in pages 577, 579 and 581, it's a variation on the original additional information. So it's kind of an ongoing issue. But it's obviously, you know, it's up to yourselves whether or not you want to take that into account or not. But I'm honestly struggling to see a compelling reason as to why it should be taken into account when you're reviewing the decision that was taken.
So that's why I asked Robert to outline that, so you get it through the professional advisor, because my thoughts were similar in regards to that. So, like I say, different, this is change of use. It's the principle of development's been established, so it's not like looking for permission to build a residential property here. That already exists. It's about the occupation in particular, isn't it? It's the who can occupy that particular dwelling and why. And obviously, correct me if I'm wrong here at any point. So further information, Robert went saying that. So further information has been supplied. I think the move is that actually they're compliant with regards to roads conditions, but potentially that's the inference what will be there. But we've got to make a decision. I think, and this is the point to make it, whether we're willing to accept that as further information, or should that really in real terms go through a further plan application, which would mean if that was the case, we'd refuse it or uphold the original decision, I should say, and it would then, that new information would then be determined through the delegated authority or otherwise if it was drawn in committee. But through a new planning application, it would be determined at that point. So remember, that's really where we are. That's why I asked Robert to say that, make comments. So this isn't about the establishment. The properties exist. It's not about that. It's whether they can comply really with off-street parking and the roads officers. Backland development is really beyond it because it's already there. So it's no, I know that's backland and backyards being the same thing has been mentioned within the report, but that's almost a red herring because it's already built. This is about restriction of accessibility, safe access and egress for vehicles. Members, I'm going to turn it over to yourselves, but my question to you at this moment in time is, have we got enough information to make a determination, firstly, and secondly, if we have, should we include or exclude the further information that's been put to us? Keith, Councillor Walters?
Yeah, my general feeling is that yes, we have got enough information, and yes, we should include the extra information.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Keith. I'll ask other members, and if I don't hear any other member coming in, we'll take that as a decision then, that we do include that further information. And we have enough. Okay, we'll take that as done then. So taking that into consideration, we're at a stage where we've got all the relevant information that we need in which to determine this. We've got we can use the further information that's been supplied. So again, I'll open it up to members to start gauging their thoughts in regards to this particular case. Like I say, it's change of use, not a new development. Keith, I don't know, Keith, have you got any particular comments? Councillor Walters?
Just obviously, my issue really isn't with the car parking; it's the development. I know you said the building is already there, but basically you're saying if it's change of use, that is a development in the backland development, which I think is how the thing is described. So my feeling is I would go along with the officer's decision to refuse.
No, thanks so much for that. So I'll get Robert to explain that more eloquently as what I did. But it uses about the occupation of the building itself in particular. We can't take it away, we can't. But the occupation, I think that's correct. But I'll ask Robert to outline that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's two reasons for refusal here that represent the appointed officer's decision, and they're in pages 604 to 605 of your papers. So the first one, I won't read out all of the policies, but it basically says the change of use of an ancillary residential annex, which was approved and conditioned only on the basis of it remaining as part of the same single planning unit as Rose Cottage, to a separate freestanding dwelling house would result in a backland development, which would not accord with or enhance the character of the village, and which would result in an unacceptably poor level of amenity for the occupants of both properties. So backland development is, in essence, separate housing development within a back garden area of a house. It's not considered generally to create a good pattern of development. So you've got two housing units within the same curtilage, one located to the rear of the building line of the house at the front. That is a kind of standard thing. It's sometimes known as a tandem access arrangement as well, in the sense that you've got a vehicle access that maybe serves both properties. It serves the first one and then the second one. So it's sometimes known as tandem development too. The second reason is it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that both Rose Cottage and the proposed new separate dwelling house could be appropriately serviced in terms of the provision of the required off-street car parking and turning facilities or safe vehicular access, either by way of separate individual accesses or a shared access where two cars can safely pass each other. So at the point of determination, that hadn't been demonstrated either, which is obviously part of the reason why you've had the submission of additional information for that. The question is, has it been satisfactorily demonstrated at the moment? I think things are still left unresolved there from what I'm reading.
So members, I'll share my thoughts a wee bit further then. So I would for me, I probably, if it had been making it as an individual decision, I probably would have left that information away, but quite happy that it's there and went back to the original case office and the information they had at the time. And that's because by way of being able to professionally reassess the information that's now been submitted and potentially further, because this is about access and egress. The backland development, for me, because it's already it's there, I know it's a fully suspensive condition. It should be occupied as somebody who's related to the original dwelling, Rose Cottage at the front. That'll be there, but that's about change of that in particular. So get a change of use, so it will be two separate residential properties. So I feel the backland doesn't really apply to this, but the potential conflict with road safety in real terms does. So I'm, like yourself, for slightly different reasons, but similar, inclined to agree that the original decision should be upheld, because there is an opportunity to come forward and submit the fullest of information and let them go through the planning process again. I'd be okay with that, but like I say, I'm very much subject to, again, open to what members I think I'll be driven by the committee. Councillor Maureen Johnson, Maureen, you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. And I'm just looking at the access. If it were made a separate dwelling, that would be a shared access, and it's not really wide enough for vehicles to, as I said, pass. And I think I can see that causing problems in the future, being a shared access. And if there were 3 or 4 cars using it, or even 3 cars, I think it could be a difficult one if it was to become a separate building on its own, you know, a separate property. It was just my comments.
No, thanks so much for the members. I'll just go online to see if anybody in particular, if nobody comes in, Keith outlined his thoughts, which are, we're both in similar minds, that it should be refused. The original decision upheld, because there's opportunities in particular to submit further information. That's from my perspective, which could possibly address and come to a resolution. Come back to, I maybe shouldn't say this because Councillor, a wee bit chastised by Councillor Thompson earlier, quite rightly so, but again, sitting as a member of the Integration Joint Board, chair of the Strategic Housing Committee, and you get heavily involved with the Health Social Care Partnership as well, and we're constantly supporting and helping people through that to, in particular, their own personal health needs. So it's touched upon within the report. We're all aware of that, but that's not a particular plan and policy we're bringing at this moment in time. But because of the amount of stuff we're involved in across the council and other bodies, I can certainly see a drive for this and understand the reasons behind it. But I would look in this particular case right now with what's in front of us, I would support the refusal at this point. And if nobody's got to come out with anything different, 2 of us have voiced their opinion, and that'll be the decision. Nobody else is coming in, and obviously we've got the views of Councillor Johnson as well. Tracy, would you be able to, unless anybody else is wanting to come in? No, are you too comfortable? Robert, and you comfortable? Laura? No, Tracy.
Thanks, Chair. Just for the purposes of the minute and the decision notice, I just confirm that members agreed to accept the additional late information, and they noted the request for the site visit but felt that they had sufficient information today, and they've agreed to uphold the decision of the appointed officer.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Members, no further business. Somebody will be in contact in regards to the site visit. Hopefully we'll get them both on the same day. Thanks so much for your time and attention today. Cheers.